green tea. Both of those enhance your fatty acid burning, so it's actually enhancing the benefits of a fast. Occasionally, if I'm going to do a pretty epic workout, the two things that I'll use in combo are ketone esters with essential amino acids. You combine those, it's a very low number of calories, but that's like rocket fuel.
How much?
Because you get the anabolism, about 10 grams of essential amino acids, and then the ketones. What I've been doing is a shot glass of this stuff called, it's Ketone Aid, and then there's another company called HVMN that does like they all taste like ass, but you combine those with like a little bit of amino acids, so you have high ketones, high amino acids, but neither of those are insulinogenic, so it still keeps you in a relatively fasted state if you want to go to a hard workout or maintain muscle or whatever.
What about cordyceps mushrooms? You ever fuck around with those?
They're amazing. Yeah, I like cordyceps. They seem to act primarily on some of the pathways for oxygenation.
Have we gotten you any
blood
of
cell
the
production,
Onnit Shroom Tech?
lungs? Yeah, I've got all the Onnit stuff.
Yeah.
Shroom Tech is good. Actually, Four Sigmatic does a cordyceps as well. But the other one, the lion's mane, what I've been doing, I'll do this about 2 times a week. Just take a very small amount of psilocybin, about 0.2 grams of psilocybin, and you take 2 packets of that lion's mane, the Four Sigmatic lion's mane extract, and then anything that increases blood flow. So it could be like beetroot, any nitric oxide precursors. You could probably try Shroom Tech. Niacin, a lot of people use niacin, but you combine anything that increases blood flow, a couple packets of the lion's mane, and then about 0.2 grams of psilocybin, and the cognitive pick-me-up you get from that is profound.
Ooh.
I mean, you know that psilocybin increases your sensory perception, your ability to pick out color, smell, sense temperature, etc. But just for getting through a day of work, or even like going on a long hike, or I would not be surprised if our ancestors used psilocybin for hunting, because you
Here. That's an invalid target.
you actually do get a pretty good increase in sensory perception, smell, and sight from it.
And visual acuity as well.
Yeah, but that mix works really well, where you do the lion's mane along with the psilocybin extract.
It makes sense that there would be some sort of a symbiotic benefit to combining those sort of mushrooms together.
Yeah. Well, it's like that, we were talking about this last time, that doctrine of signatures, the idea that what things look like in nature could actually give you clues about their benefit for the body. And when you find lion's mane, I don't know if you've seen it in nature, but it looks like this cluster of axons and dendrites. Like, it looks like brain cells, up close.
See if you can find it.
Yeah, just look up like lion's mane in nature.
In the wild.
Pretty badass looking. Or like, there's a lot of stuff like that. Like, there's this place in Kauai that I go to called Kauai Organic Pharmacy, and they just grow on this tiny little 2-acre farm all these different superfoods like noni and cacao, and they've got comfrey there. And if you dig up the root of a comfrey plant,
there it is.
Yeah, that's lion's mane.
That is crazy.
Yeah,
it really does look like a
nuts?
lion's mane. I mean, what a great name for it.
Yeah, but
too.
it also looks like dendrites and axons and neurons. So it's very cool.
What a freaky
it's an
plant.
Amazing plant. I have yet to actually find it in nature, but apparently you can find it up in the inland northwest where I live. Anyways, though,
Watch it.
comfrey,
Dave
they
nearly
call it
stepped on
knit
Shugo's
bone,
tail. Nyark.
and the roots look like knuckles and joints and human bones. And it's very
Nice
good for
talking
healing
to
up
you, Dave.
fractures or for making like a
Fearless one.
plaster for your joints.
Fearless
A
Called
plaster.
one.
comfrey
What do you
clean.
mean by
Yeah.
a plaster?
Yeah, well, what that
talking.
pharmacy in Kauai does is they
Fearless
grind it
one.
into a powder, and then you
Fearless
reconstitute
one.
that with water, and you smear it like over a shoulder
Greetings,
joint. And you can just
fearless
use
one.
like a t-shirt or whatever to hold
Fearless
it on there, or an ace bandage, and it actually increases the speed of bone healing or joint healing. Like it's an anti-inflammatory. They do like a muscle cream with it too, made out of the comfrey. So it's very interesting. There's all sorts of different things in nature that give you clues. You know, like the carrots and the eggs for your eyes, or the walnuts for the brain. I think there's something to it.
Well, how does that stuff increase your bone healing? Like, what is it doing? What's the mechanism?
I don't know. It might be like some way of mineral delivery through the skin, something like that.
I've been blown away by CBD, by using putting CBD over muscle injuries.
A lot of companies do. Like, you know what the trick with that is? One of the doctors who work with Tour de France teams was showing me this. Do you have an electrical muscle stimulation unit?
I do.
Like
but I
a
never
Mark
use
Pro
it.
or a Compax or what have you?
Yeah, I got a compact.
So you put your CBD oil on, or your magnesium, or your arnica, your Tramil, whatever it is that you're using, and you rub that in. Then you put the electrodes on top of that, right? And then you put an ice pack on top of that. So it's three things. You've got the cream or lotion, you've got the electrodes, and then you've got the topical thing that holds it on. And the electricity drives the anti-inflammatory deeper into the tissue. So it enhances the effect of like a CBD oil or a magnesium, and the ice allows you to turn up the electricity to a higher level without getting uncomfortable. So I do this at home. I use one called a Mark Pro, and just kind of surround the area that's actually, you know, torn or that's painful, and I'll do a rub like that. But you're right, CBD oil works amazingly for that.
Yeah, that stuff is it's remarkable because you're putting it on the surface of your skin, and it's weird how it can get all the way deep into a muscle or into a joint.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people use it with knee pain, and it's remarkable how well it works.
Skin is a mouth.
Yeah.
That's why some of those personal care products are kind of scary. But CBD,
Personal care products.
like personal care, but that like parabens and phthalates, and, estrogen, phytoestrogens and endocrine disruptors and stuff like that in them. I mean, they've done studies where like guys will like take a shower with the average shampoo that's got like parabens and phthalates and these things that can be endocrine disruptors or phytoestrogens, mimic estrogen in a man's body, and they actually within a short period of time after taking the shower and using these care products, you can actually detect this stuff in their urine. Like your body's actually soaking this up and absorbing it.
Huh.
There's a very, very interesting book. I interviewed this guy on my podcast. It's called Estrogeneration, about how many guys have really high estrogen levels now from
Shampoo.
primarily their personal care products
Really?
or their household cleaning chemicals.
So it's true that stuff's trying to turn you into a bitch.
Yeah.
It is.
More or less.
Like if you go over a
yeah.
guy's house and you see a
Yeah.
bunch of sweet-smelling shampoos, you're like, what
that's
are they
what
doing
always
to you, bro?
surprised me. Like when I raced for Team Timex, we used to train out at the Giant Stadium in New Jersey, and I go in the locker room there, and it's just like this. You'd think that the peak of performance in professional sports would have started looking into by this point how could you keep testosterone as high as possible in a male athlete's body. Right, but you walk into the bathroom and it's just like every endocrine disruptor known to man just like lined up in a pretty shiny row there on the shelf in front of the mirror. The shaving cream and the shampoos and the spray deodorant.
Shaving
just
cream
like,
is an endocrine disruptor?
yeah, I mean not all shaving cream,
Right.
but if it's something that has those kind of chemicals in it, absolutely.
Have you ever
Yeah.
used Dr. Carver's shave butter?
That sounds familiar.
It's a Dollar Shave Club
Yeah.
product. It's the most
Yeah.
fucking incredible shaving cream of all time. Like
Yeah.
regular shaving cream, you just won't use it after you try that stuff.
I think I've tried that because
These are so smooth.
this probably happens to you. You get lots of personal care products
Yeah.
since your studio or your home.
Yeah, but that stuff blows me
It's
away.
like
It's
tuna.
like a butter. I mean,
It's called
like,
Dr. Carver's.
Yeah,
Huh.
yeah.
Interesting.
I'll get them to send you some.
I'll have to try it.
You'll fucking be blown away by it.
I don't have to shave that much, so don't have them send very much.
You don't grow a lot of facial hair?
I don't grow a lot of facial hair. No. But yeah, these
would think with all your experimenting,
you'd think something would have sprouted, but you'd think it'd be kind of weird. Like it'd just be like one right side patch of the chin,
right?
And it's like a hair, but there's a mole attached to the hair.
Do you ever wonder like what you're doing to yourself?
Little stem cells bleeding out the end.
Do you ever like sit in bed
occasionally?
At night?
There's some of the stuff on stem cells that admittedly are a little bit of like a venture into human experimentation without robust evidence of safety.
How about the one where you shot it into your dick?
Yeah,
that's a good example.
Yeah. But I'm kind of shifting my whole philosophy on stem cells to kind of go after stuff from my own body as much as possible.
Bone marrow.
Being autologous, you're like that one I did in New York City. It's not somebody else's blood.
Right,
it's just my own stuff. Or, in some cases you could argue that placental or umbilical or amniotic cells are so young and so pluripotent, and if they don't have the DNA in the nucleus, which apparently they can kill off somehow, which is how they make exosomes. You're not getting somebody else's DNA. It's just something your body would have made anyways and recognized as self. So yeah, sometimes though I probably have taken it too far with a few of those things. But the CBD that you were talking about, I'm a huge fan of. I take CBD before bed every night.
Orally?
A lot of it.
Yeah.
When you look at the studies on CBD for anxiety and for sleep, most of them are pushing 100 and up to 900 milligrams, which is nuts. When you look at the actual serving size of the average CBD tincture or capsule or pill, it's like 10. Right, so you got to take a lot of it. But I sleep like a baby. Like last night, I got the ring that I do my sleep squat on. I slept 8.5 hours last night. And I take 100 milligrams of CBD. I take a little bit of melatonin, and I'm just out. But you got to take a lot of it. And you wake up kind of groggy when you do.
Really?
But if you're used to that and like you get up, shake it off, 10 minutes later, you're good to go.
What's the
CBD
grogginess
works
coming
very
from?
well. Probably just overstimulation of the endocannabinoid system. You're just like super relaxed, which I want to be when I sleep.
Right, of course, yeah.
Yeah, so it works.
What about regular marijuana? Does that affect your sleep? Do you find it beneficial or no?
So CBD can enhance your deep sleep cycles, all right, which is when a good majority of your neuronal repair and recovery occurs. THC allows you to sleep, and it actually decreases sleep latency, how long it takes you to fall asleep, but it does reduce the amount of time you spend in deep sleep. Right, so if you're one of those people whose mind races, who's hypercharged up when and you got to get to sleep at night, use THC. Like hit a vape pen or whatever, but know that you might miss out on some of the things you want during deep sleep: memory consolidation, neuronal repair and recovery, nervous system repair. But it's still pretty decent sleep, and you're not getting as much of a reduction in deep sleep as you would get if you were to be taking like Ambien or Valium or something that's literally just like a sledgehammer for your frontal cortex that knocks you out, but you don't get no deep sleep. So if you do this, if you were to get like a sleep tracker and test your deep sleep levels, you would find that with CBD, you don't fall asleep as fast, but you get higher deep sleep levels. And then with THC, you can fall asleep faster, but your deep sleep isn't quite as high. When you consider that CBD can counteract a lot of the effects of THC, then that means that what you could try is take THC to allow you to fall asleep faster, but then pile a whole bunch of CBD on top of that. And I've done that before too, where you just take a hit on a vape pen, then take a bunch of CBD, and you shoot for the best of both worlds.
Yeah, folks that are taking Ambien, especially people that are doing it virtually every night, that has got to have a profound effect on your brain's ability to recover.
I think there are a lot of people shorting themselves on life who are taking Ambien or Valium. I think to start with sleep, you need to rely on your body's own internal chemistry, and that would be breath work. Like, I think everybody, before they start taking phosphatidylserine and adaptogenic herbs and all this shit for cortisol, and before they start taking Valium or Ambien or anything else for sleep, you should learn how to control your physiology with your breath. I think that's the most powerful way to do it. Your prana, your chakra, whatever you want to call it, like being able to do things like breath work, box breathing, alternate nostril breathing, even holotropic breathing. Like, you can go some very interesting places in terms of DMT production by the pineal gland by just doing holotropic breath work. Like, there's a lot of very interesting things that you can do with your breath. But I think that for getting to sleep or for decreasing stress, start with the breath, and then you start to introduce some of these other molecules. But Ambien and Valium, like in the era of like readily available CBD and all the other sleep compounds that we have available, like valerian, passion flower, and chamomile, and all of those are what are called gamma aminobutyric acid, or GABA precursors. They produce inhibitory neurotransmitters. Like, I don't understand why people are still taking Ambien and Valium.
Because they're idiots.
Yeah.
They're just addicted to it, or they just want a pill. I mean, that's essentially what it is.
They want
It's
fat
so
in their
bad
buttocks,
for
and
you.
they want Ambien and Valium.
I don't know if it's the same
Yeah.
folks, but many times it is.
be.
I think it's our president. I think our president takes that shit. I think he's sleeping with Ambien.
I think a lot of politicians do that.
Yeah, well, they can't sleep otherwise.
Yeah.
They're fucking ruining the world.
Right.
I found that if my brain is racing, just completely concentrating on breathing in and breathing out, and concentrating on just the breath itself, like really being cognizant of it, and slow, deliberate breaths in and out and in and out. By doing that over long periods of time, I've found that I can pretty much conk myself out.
You can, but that takes focus. A lot
Yeah.
of people are not willing to learn how to do that because they want the fast track out. They just want to take a drug and pass out.
That is the thing, right? They just want a pill.
Yeah.
It's very unfortunate that those things exist, and that sort of thinking is, it's reinforced.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's encouraged, in fact. All these ads and all these doctors and different people. Well, if you have a hard time sleeping, I'll just write your prescription.
Yeah.
And next thing you know,
And I mean, you look at the animal world, like they self-medicate. They'll use clay for parasites, and dogs will eat grass for stomach issues, and I guess birds now are putting like nicotine in cigarettes in their nests because there's some kind of benefit to that. And you see animals self-medicating. You see our ancestors using everything from cannabis to Ceylon cinnamon to all sorts of different derivatives for thousands of years. So it's not like supplementation or self-medication or the whole creation of pharmaceuticals is something that's unnatural or not an acceptable human activity. But once you start to use it as a crutch, I think that's where you run into issues. Like once you deny the human body's ability to be able to heal
Was there something you
itself or to be able to decrease stress on its own, and you begin to rely on these exogenous chemicals, I think that's where you start playing with fire.
I just wonder what's happening to people's minds over long-term use of this stuff, where you're not going into these deep sleep cycles and you're using it every night, because essentially once you get hooked on it, a lot of people have a really hard time sleeping without it.
Yeah. I mean, they're shorting themselves, right?
Right, but I mean, I wonder what
big part
studies,
of it is
if anything.
memory, it's
Right.
learning, like that. That's where a lot of that type of stuff happens.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same thing with what's it called? Glymphatic drainage. Like this new drainage system for the brain that they've just discovered in recent years. This idea that you actually detoxify the brain during these sleep cycles, and it's even enhanced when you sleep on your side. They even looked at sleeping positions in this thing called glymphatic drainage. And when you're not going through proper sleep cycles, or you're constantly waking because you're on your back, and you have, a lot of people have sleep apnea, where you'll look at their sleep charts and they'll frequently wake during the night, or you'll see periods where they just get ripped out of deep sleep. Yeah, you wake up and you don't have memory consolidation, or you don't have the type of neuronal repair and recovery that you want, or
Safe travels.
you can even short yourself on muscle repair. And there's probably a lot that we don't know about just dreaming and its ability to be able to do things like help form memories or make learning or experiences more deeply rooted. But yeah, I mean, it's I think sleep architecture is something that just gets super fucked up in a modern post-industrial era. We've got access to pharmaceuticals that just take a sledgehammer to our heads.
Yeah, no question about it. And it's also, there's been a lot of work done on actually going to sleep with a problem. This whole idea of sleep on it. Like there's actually something real to that there's some cognitive balancing that's going on while you're sleeping, where your mind is actually going over whatever issues you might have and trying to come up with a problem during sleep time, during your subconscious.
You don't want to know how many times now, I'm learning this as I get older, that you delay a decision, or you delay replying to an email, or delay responding to a text message, or what have you, until you've gotten a full night of sleep on it. And the clarity that you get after that, I mean, you just basically you think about it a little bit before you fall asleep, then you go to sleep, and you wake up with such a better answer. The same thing with walk on it. Like, walk on it is another thing. We know you make more nerve growth factor and more brain-derived neurotrophic factor when you walk while you're learning. I recently gave a TEDx talk, and I made the whole TEDx talk, and I learned the whole thing while I was walking up on the farm road back behind my house. I just walk up through the forest, pop out into the sunshine, walk up and down that road, and just listen to my TED talk on my earbuds and give my talk. And it's amazing for the brain. But yeah, I agree. Dwelling on something before you go to sleep, it does the trick.
I always, if I do that, I always have a response the next day that's kinder, less emotional, more understanding, friendlier.
Yeah.
It's reciprocating any sort of good vibes. It's really interesting. It's really interesting how there is some sort of a wisdom that's imparted on you while you're sleeping.
There is, and now what I do is I'll think about what it is, but I am a big fan of fiction before you fall asleep. It just lets you escape to a whole different world. I took my kids on this giant tour of New York City. Like, we went to Chelsea Market and the Highline Park and the Empire State Building and Ellis Island. We just did it all. But we went across the street from Central Park to the New York Historical Society, where they had a Harry Potter exhibit. And we walked in there. I've just always been resistant to the Harry Potter phase. I've never read the books, never watched the movies, but my kids really wanted to go, so I took them. And when I walked through there and saw all the research, the deep research that J.K. Rowling did on alchemy and
Easy
herbology
teleport,
and the history of magic and
I could travel more.
wizardry and she actually took a deep dive into all this stuff. She pre-planned out all 7 of those books before she even wrote the first one. And all of her original manuscripts were in there, and her letters back and forth to the editor and to the publisher. I walked out the other end of that exhibit. It took us about 2 hours to get through, just looking at everything, thumbing through everything, and I was just like a diehard Harry Potter fan. Like,
Where is this exhibit?
this was at, it was one of those things that was at the New York Historical Society, but a lot of these, they'll do an exhibit and they'll kind of go in and out during the year, so I doubt it's still going right now because this was like 3 months ago. And we walked out, and my kids are like, "Dad, this is the Gryffindor wand, and this is the Slytherin or Dumbledore's wand, and the Gryffindor sweater, and the Slytherin sweater." And I just started buying him all the sweaters and the wands, and now I'm reading the book. So I'm halfway through Goblet of Fire right now, and I'm actually digging it.
My 10-year-old read all of them. She read all of them in the course of a year.
Yeah.
Have you gone to the Universal ride?
No, but they have
Harry
a brochure
Potter
for
world.
that down at the Hilton where I'm staying.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
The Harry Potter World ride, it's incredible. It's a 3D ride where you're on a roller coaster, but it's not 3D, but it's, augmented or
Yeah, that'll be next for me.
virtual
I'm a
reality.
fan. I'll go by myself.
Yeah.
Scream, my hands
it.
up in the air.
You'll love it.
Yeah.
It's really
Yeah.
good. The
Yeah.
whole Harry Potter world is really good.
It's
Don't drink
amazing.
that butter beer, though. It'll give you diabetes.
I did. Well, my one of my boys made butterbeer for his classmates because they've got like they help mom with all this stuff. They've got like a cooking podcast, and they do.
Cool.
Their last episode was marshmallows. They made marshmallows, but there's like a cup's worth of bone broth in every marshmallow, and it's like this healthy, like glycine-infused marshmallow that they made a dark chocolate fondue with. And
Wait a
then
minute,
you dip it in coconut flakes.
How are you using that much bone broth in a marshmallow?
I don't know.
What does it feel like?
I don't have the recipe, but it tastes amazing. Like I'm usually not much of a sneak snacks into bed kind of guy, but I was like taking marshmallows to bed, eating marshmallows and reading Harry Potter.
How much sugar is in the marshmallows?
Not a lot.
Really?
Not a lot. No, they're doing a good job with their podcast. Like they're doing a lot of like blackstrap molasses and stevia and raw honey, and they're doing like what else did they make? They made like a gluten-free baked donut with a cream cheese ginger frosting and cacao nibs on top.
Oof.
That just like you dip it in coffee and it tastes like a real donut.
Good Lord.
And they're turning into little chefs. They
You're
do a
making me
cooking
hungry, dude.
podcast. Yeah.
What's the benefit of grass-fed beef over regular beef? I know there is a benefit, but I never can recall it correctly. It's something to do with the
It's mostly
essential
fatty acid ratios. Yeah, because grain you're gonna have more of the omega-6 fatty acids, which have been unfairly vilified. Meaning that a lot of people are just like, don't eat any omega-6s, don't have any arachidonic acid, like don't overdo
that?
your seeds, your nuts, your nut butter. Kind of like the orthorexic health world as a whole. Like when you read nutrition magazines and stuff, they're like, do your omega-3s, but be careful. Americans have a 20-to-1 omega-6 to omega-3 ratio, but the problem is that omega-6s, that's a lot of those are derived from what are called parent essential oils, and your cell membranes need a certain amount of omega-6 fatty acids from seeds and nuts and plants, and even to a certain extent grains. And when you have an excess of omega-3s and not enough omega-6s because you're going so far into the fish oil category, then it actually damages a component of your mitochondrial membrane called cardiolipin. You actually make less of that.
Really?
And so you interfere with normal cellular activity.
What seeds are most beneficial? Flax?
I would imagine the most nutrient-dense ones.
Right,
So
do you have a specific ones that you-
almonds, macadamia. I mean, what I eat is like almonds, macadamia nuts, Brazil nuts. I just don't eat the quasi-nuts like peanuts, which are, they're not as high in nutrient density. They're more of a legume than a nut. I eat a lot of my nuts either raw or lightly roasted. You always look at the label to make sure they didn't put a lot of vegetable oil and canola oil in them. But I'm a fan of nuts in moderate. I eat my nuts like you'd eat your nuts if you were gonna have to shell them, right? Like if you've ever had to shell a walnut, you're not gonna eat 30 walnuts because that'd be exhausting, right? You might have a handful, like eat your pistachios in the shell. It's annoying as hell, but keeps you from eating too many of them.
I buy them shelled and I eat fistfuls of them.
Yeah.
Like last night I ate like a half a bag.
Yeah. Pistachios are great for your microbiome too.
Yeah.
They actually had a couple of research studies on that last year that showed an improvement in the diversity of the bacteria in your gut with pistachios. That's one of the nuts that's good for your body, probably because of the fiber content in pistachios. But grass-fed versus grain-fed is primarily the omega-3 fatty acids. I mean, you have less of the arachidonic acid, less of the potentially inflammatory omega-6 fatty acids. There's probably part of it being that grass-fed, grass-finished beef is generally raised on a farm that's using less herbicides, less pesticides, raising their meat in a more sustainable fashion, giving it less hormones, giving it less antibiotics. That's painting with a broad brush. But generally, grass-fed, there's more to it than just the fatty acid composition. It's just a better meat overall. Better health-wise. Grain-fed beef, I will not lie. Like you can have a pretty damn tasty fatty cut of grain-fed beef. Like
you certainly can, but I honestly prefer the taste of grass-fed. I like the denser meat, the darker meat. I like it better. Just to me, it just tastes healthier. I crave it more, And when I go back and forth between the two of them, when I eat grain-fed, it feels like a lazy cow, like it's mushy. Yeah. It's got it's good, it's delicious, don't get me wrong, but there's a difference.
It's kind of funny because I've gone over to Dubai a few times and taught like fitness conferences over there, and they advertise grain-fed. Like they want everybody, like when you go to the restaurants, like this beef is the finest grain-fed beef.
If you go to like Peter Luger's, which is
a lot of grain,
pretty widely recognized as the greatest steakhouse in the world, that place is all grain-fed. That place is a
trip. I didn't like my steak at Peter Luger's.
How fucking dare you?
I
Who
know.
are you?
I'm gonna get killed.
Why did you not like it?
Some rude Brooklyn waiter is gonna take me out. But
how could you not have liked it?
I didn't like it.
What?
I didn't like it. Just something about like the meat just tasted. It tasted like it was drenched in vegetable oil. Like something about it just didn't taste right. And maybe I had a poor Peter Luger's experience.
That doesn't even make sense.
I did not enjoy it that much.
Dude, I ate there, and afterwards I'm like, I don't think it gets better. I don't think food gets better.
Yeah.
How dare you?
New York does have a lot of good restaurants, though.
Yeah, they do.
My buddy David Boulay, he's a chef over there, and he has this wonderful restaurant where he brings like doctors and nutritionists in, and they teach you about certain aspects of the food that you're eating. Like I did one there on longevity, and I taught about like having bitters before your meal to reduce your glucose and your insulin response to the meal, and the use of like sweet breads for your thymus gland to increase the activity of your immune system, to like a lot of these polyphenols and antioxidants from the purples and the greens and the blues, to there are these things called uncoupling proteins that actually get activated with cryotherapy and cold water immersion, but that also are something that get activated with the consumption of it's like a sea urchin. It's basically it's like a sea urchin foam that they did at this dinner. But basically what he does is he'll partner with the physician or the nutritionist or whatever and make this amazing like 4-hour 5-star meal that's designed to enhance the health effects of whatever it is that you just learned about.
Wow.
And I was actually in New York when I did that blood procedure a couple weeks ago. I dropped in there again and ate. That's one of my favorite places to go.
You know who's got a steakhouse in New York City? Is that guy who fucking sprinkles the salt. What the hell's his name? Salt Bay? He's got a place in New York City.
I don't know this guy.
You know that meme online where the guy's got the salt? throwing it on the meat?
No.
No, you're too busy doing actual work.
But I like salt. I like
Yeah.
I like good salt. As a matter of fact, you know what the very best salt that you can get is?
What?
This is based on, I was with a group of doctors a couple of months ago in Park City, and this guy, one of the guys who was there, he's like a water and a salt expert. And he did what's called a mass spectrometry analysis of all these popular salts, like Himalayan sea salt, and black Kona salt, and Aztec salt, and Mexican salt, and all these different salts.
Be careful.
And analyze them for their mineral content, because you want high mineral content, but their metal content, right? Like we know that iron, especially in guys now, we're finding out it's not that great. It's oxidative. It can cause damage. It's associated with inflammation. We know that metals and microplastics and all these kind of things are winding up in the food supply. But top of the list in terms of cleanliness and mineral content, what do you think that was?
Kosher salt.
Wasn't kosher salt. You can buy this at just about any grocery store.
Morton sea salt.
No, it's Celtic salt.
Celtic
salt. You know, a blue bag, it's kind of like a gray salt, and it's gray because they don't like bleach it, but it's still clean. It's not like pink and reddish because it doesn't have a lot of iron.
I've never even heard of Celtic. Have you ever heard of Celtic salt?
Yeah. It's amazing. It's flavorful. It's big chunks, so it works well as a meat rub.
Oh,
I carry salt.
There it is. Look at that.
Yeah, I mean, you can buy that just about anywhere. Yeah, and that stuff is about the healthiest salt you can get.
Okay.
According to this dude. Yeah, I like it. I always travel with some kind of salt. My wife gets pissed because she'll make these amazing meals, and the first thing I do is I just pull out the salt and just cover everything in salt. But I think it's because I excrete a lot of salt.
If you're working out a lot.
When I raced for Timex, actually, they brought in a bunch of physiologists to test our sweat sodium analysis, meaning that they measure how much sodium you excrete for any given volume of sweat. And this kind of returns that whole genetic thing. Like when you look at people of a Northern European ancestry who would have come from a population that did a lot of fermenting, a lot of curing, a lot of pickling, we would develop some pretty robust sodium excretion mechanisms, right? Because we're preserving our food with salt. You don't want all that salt to build up in the body because theoretically you could increase blood pressure, you could cause some damage if you have too much salt. And when you look at other folks who didn't, people who would, for example, sweat a lot, live in a hot environment, like whatever, South Africa or a very hot region of the Philippines or whatever, they would have some pretty robust salt conservation mechanisms to be able to hold on to sodium and hold on to salt because you're sweating more. Well, my sweat sodium analysis revealed that I lose like 2.5 times more salt in my sweat than the average person. So I think that dictates to a certain extent almost my craving for salt. When I was racing Ironman triathlon, I would lay awake at night and I could feel my blood pounding in my ears after a day of training. And I started using salt heavily, and one of the first things that happens, because salt regulates aldosterone, which is one of the compounds that regulates your blood pressure, all that went away. Like I could fall asleep at night, when you lay your head down on your pillow, and I couldn't hear the blood pounding in my ears. So for about 4 years, I've been salt on everything, just a ton of it.
I'm sold. I got to wrap this up, unfortunately. That was awesome, though. You're the best. Dude, thank you so much. It's always good to talk to you. I don't know how the fuck you retain all this information, but I'm glad you do.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure. Give everybody your Instagram.
Just Google Ben Greenfield.
On everything.
There you go.
All right. Thank you, brother.
Cool.
Appreciate it,
Thanks, man.
When you unlock the power of premium, you're unlocking freedom. Freedom to listen to any song on demand on any device. The freedom to skip songs as many times as you want, even on mobile. The freedom to listen offline. Even listen to all your music ad-free. Experience the power of premium. Tap the banner to learn more.
Here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. TJ,
Yo,
how are you, brother?
I'm doing good, man.
Three, 2, 1. Boom. Hello, Jack.
What's up?
Nice to meet you, man.
Nice to meet you finally.
Yeah, keep this sucker like a fist from your face is
Got
always
it.
good. First of all, dude, you started a company. When you started Twitter, when you guys first started, did you have any idea? There's no way you could have had any idea what it would be now.
No.
But one of the things I always try to emphasize with people when they're people like, oh, Twitter's crazy. I'm like, how could it not be crazy? There's never been anything like it before. Like, imagine trying to predict the kind of the president of the United States uses Twitter to threaten other countries.
Yeah.
I mean, who the fuck saw that coming? Nobody saw
Not
that
us.
coming.
Not
what
us.
did you think it was going to be when you first did it?
Well, you know, we were building this thing for ourselves, and that's how everything starts. We wanted to use it. We wanted to, you know, stay connected with each other.
Like a group text, almost.
Like a group text. We loved our phones. We loved technology. We actually started this as a Hack Week project out of a failed company called Audio. It was podcasting.
I remember that. I remember Audio.
Super early on. We were really creative folks, but we weren't that passionate about where podcasting was going in our particular domain. And we just got a lot of competition early on. iTunes just released their podcast directory, but we knew we wanted to work together. We knew we loved this idea of one-button publishing. We love this idea of collaboration. We love this idea of being anywhere and being able to share what was happening. That was the idea. I mean, that was it, and that's what we wanted it to be. And I think the most beautiful and also sometimes uncomfortable aspect of Twitter is we really learned what it wanted to be, and the people helped create it. Like everything that we hold sacred now, the @ symbol, the hashtag, the retweet, those were not invented by me or the company. Those were things that we discovered, things that we discovered people using, and we just observed it, and we noticed what they were trying to do. They were trying to talk with one another. They were trying to collect tweets around topics with the hashtag.
Has anybody figured out when the first use of hashtag something was created?
Yeah, it was actually our lead designer, Robert Anderson, who leads our design in the Cash App. Hired him for Square later on. But he was the first one. He was actually communicating with his brother. And he put @Buzz, his brother's name is Buzz. And it just kind of spread. It wasn't in mass, but people were doing it. But what was most interesting is not what they were doing, but what they wanted to do with it. They wanted to address each other. And that changed the company completely. That changed the service, because it went from just broadcasting what's happening to conversation, and to being able to address anyone publicly out in the open, which came with it a lot of power and also a lot of issues as well.
Yeah, the use of hashtags, like looking up hashtag, you know, Fry Fest, or hashtag, you know, anytime there's something weird that's in the news, that's such a unique way to find things. But to go on Twitter and to utilize that, it's I mean, it's interesting that this guy just did it just to contact his brother.
Well, that was the @ symbol. The hashtag was this guy Chris Messina, and he was trying to tag around topics that he was tweeting about. And again, that spread. All we did was made it easier. We made it more accessible. We enabled everyone to do it. With the @ symbol, we made a page that collected all mentions of your name. With the hashtag, we allowed people to search immediately, so you could tap on the keyword and you would see everyone talking about that or tweeting about that specific hashtag. So these things were just emergent behaviors that we didn't predict, and they became the lifeblood of the service.
What's fascinating to me about something like Twitter or even something like YouTube is that there's not a lot of other ones like it. There's just this one thing. Like, how does that happen?
Yeah.
Where this one thing sort of gets adopted by everybody and takes over, and then just becomes this overwhelmingly massive platform. I mean, there's Vimeo, and there's a few other video services, but nothing on the scale of YouTube. And that's the same thing with Twitter. There's nothing on the scale of distributing information in a quick, short, 280-character form like that.
We, I don't think we could plan for it. I don't think we could necessarily build for that. Someone said recently we just gathered a bunch of our leadership last week in Palm Springs for an offsite, and someone said recently that Twitter was discovered. And I think what's behind all that is that it hit something foundational. It hit something essential. And my co-founder Biz likes to say that Twitter can never be uninvented. It's here. It changed everything. The use of it has been revolutionary. And it's just a simple idea of, if you could text with the entire world, if you could actually reach anyone in the world, or anyone could see what you're thinking, which I think is also the beautiful thing about text and the medium. You can actually get at someone's raw thoughts, and anyone in the world can see that instantaneously. It becomes this subconscious. It becomes this like global consciousness, and it gets to some really deep places in society, and some of those places are pretty uncomfortable.
Well, it also gets to some really deep places psychologically. There's a weirdness to it, right? There's a weirdness to sending text, particularly anonymously, and there's so many accounts that are just an egg, and so many accounts where they're clearly designed. If you like, sometimes someone will tweet something mean to me, and I'm like, wonder what this person's up to. So I go to their site, and it's just them tweeting mean shit at people all day long. Like, it's probably some angry person at work, and they're like, I'm just going to find people and fuck with them all day. Like, when did you realize, I'm sure you're aware of it, when did you realize that this was almost out of your control in terms of, like, the scale of it?
There wasn't one moment. There wasn't one moment that it just felt completely resonant. It's unfolded into the next thing and the next use case, and it just keeps surprising us with how people are using it. It definitely recently, I think we've identified some of the areas of the service that we need to pay a lot more attention to. Twitter is unique in that it has two main spaces. One, which is your timeline, and those are the people that you follow. And when you follow someone, they've earned that audience. And then it has this other world where anyone can insert themselves into the conversation. They can actually mention you, and you'll see that without asking for it. You can insert yourself into hashtags, into search. And these are areas that people have taken advantage of. And these are the areas that people have gamed our systems to, in some cases, artificially amplify, but also just to spread a lot of things that weren't possible with the velocity that they're not possible before.
Now, when this is all happening, what's the conversation like at Twitter when you're recognizing that this is happening, that people are kind of gaming the system? Like, how do you mitigate it? What's the discussion?
Well, early on it was pretty surface level. Like, how do we change some of the app dynamics? But more recently, we're trying to go a lot deeper and asking ourselves a question: when people open Twitter, what are we incentivizing? What are we telling them to do when they open up this app? We may not explicitly be doing that, but there's something that we're saying without being as clear about it. So what does the like button incentivize? What does the retweet incentivize? What does the number of followers and making that number big and bold incentivize? So I'm not sure what we should I'm not sure if we should incentivize anything, but we need to understand what that is. And I think, right now we we do incentivize a lot of echo chambers because we don't make it easy for people to follow interests and topics. It's only accounts. We incentivize a lot of outrage and hot takes because of some of the dynamics in the service not allowing a lot of nuance in conversation earlier on. Pseudonyms, this ability to not use your real name, incentivizes some positive things, like it allows for whistleblowers and journalists who might fear for their career or even worse, their life under certain regimes, but also allows for people like the example you mentioned of just random fire and spread of abuse and harassment throughout. So those are the things that we're looking at, and how do we enable more of the conversation to evolve? How do we increase the credibility or reputation of accounts? How do we identify credible voices within a particular domain, not just through this very coarse grain blue verified badge, but if you're an expert in a particular topic, how do we recognize that in real time and show that so that we can provide more context to who you're talking to? And if you want to engage in a deeper conversation or just ignore, mute, or block them.
But what is the conversation like while you're at work? Like when you're realizing that all this stuff is happening, and you're realizing that now, I mean, particularly because the president uses it so often, it's such it's his preferred platform for communicating with the people. I mean, even more so than addresses. It's really, it's very strange. What's the conversation like in the office when you're trying to figure out, hey, what's our responsibility here? Like, how are we supposed to handle this? Or how do we, I mean, you're in some ways, what Twitter's doing is it's really kind of, it's flavoring the public narrative. It's flavoring the way we communicate with each other in our culture worldwide.
Yeah, I mean, the conversation has definitely evolved. I think in the past we just got super reactive. We were reacting to all the negative things that we're seeing, and that led to a lot of short-term thinking. More recently, we've just looked much deeper. We don't react to the present day, where we look for some of the patterns. And we have a company that is not just serving the people of this particular country, the United States. This is global. We have global leaders all around the world using us in different ways. Some, more with a higher velocity. Some recognize more of the power. Some put out statements. Some lead conversations. But it's looking at all those dynamics and not trying to hyper focus on any one particular one, because if we do, we're only building it for one portion of the population or only one perceived present-day crisis.
What I'm trying to get at was like when things come up, like say if you find out that there's people from ISIS that are using Twitter, and they're using Twitter and posting things, like what is the conversation? Like what do we do about this? Do we leave this up? Do we recognize this as free speech? Do we only take it down if they're calling for murder or hate speech? Like how do you handle that?
Well, it evolves. I mean, because we first saw ISIS when the world saw ISIS, and we needed to change our policy to deal with it.
What was the initial reaction to it? So once you realized that people from ISIS were making Twitter accounts and they were trying to recruit people and doing all these things, what was the thought process? Oh,
it was a question like, what are we going to do about this?
Yeah.
We haven't experienced this before. We need to.
Nobody has. I mean, you're essentially pioneers.
No, yeah, but there are people who have experienced in different forms, in different mediums. So we reach out to our government partners, for instance, our law enforcement partners. We reach out to our peer companies to ask if they're seeing the same things that we're seeing. We have a bunch of civil societies that we talk to get their take on it as well, and we try to balance that across various spectrums, whether it be more organizations that are more focused on preventing online harassment, all the way to the ACLU and the EFF, who are protecting the First Amendment online. So we try to get as many perspectives as possible. take that and then make some informed decisions, but also realize that we're probably going to make some mistakes along the way, and all we can do to correct some of that is just be open about where we are. And that's probably where we failed the most in the past, is we just haven't been open about our thinking process, what led to particular decisions, how our terms of service evolved. The terms of service
On foot.
as an area
Safe
in our
travels.
industry is just it's a mess. No one reads them. You
Right.
sign up for these services and you quickly hit accept,
Yeah.
and we expect people to read these rules of the road, but they haven't read them. And
Have you ever read them?
I have read them.
You've read
I
your
them.
own. Have
I
you ever
re-
read Facebook's?
I haven't read Facebook's.
Yeah.
I'm not
but
on
you're
Facebook.
You're not on it?
I'm not on
Wow.
Facebook.
Fuck
No.
Facebook, right? No, just kidding. What about Instagram? You ever read theirs?
I was in the first 10 users of Instagram.
Really?
Kevin was an intern. Kevin Systrom was an intern at Odeo, and I was one of the first investors of Instagram and love the service. I don't think I've ever read their terms of service.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Even you.
Even me, but I read ours, and one of the things I noticed right away is, you read our terms of service, and one of the first things that we put at the top of the page was copyright and intellectual property protections. You go down, you scroll down, you see everything about violent threats and abuse and harassment and safety. And it's not that the company intended for that to be the order. We just added things going on. But even a read of that puts forth our point of view. Like we're actually putting copyright infringement above the safety, the physical
Right.
safety of someone. So we need to relook at some of these things and how they've evolved and how they reacted. And
But is it above just because it's listed second? I mean, they're essentially all on the same one sheet.
they're on the one
Is
sheet.
When you bring it up, when you discuss it first, is that really critical? They're all part of the terms of service.
Yeah, but I think that ordering matters. Like what do we consider to be most important?
Right.
And we have to consider physical safety to be the one thing that we protect
Right.
the most. And
So
I don't-
physical threats.
physical threats,
Doxing.
anything that impinges on someone's physical safety. This is an area where I don't think technology and services like ours have focused on enough. We haven't focused on the off-platform ramifications of what happens online.
So what do you do? Like here's a good for instance. This situation with this young kid who had the MAGA hat on and the Native American gentleman who was in front of him banging the drum, and then people are calling for this kid's name. They want his name, they want his address, including Kathy Griffin. Like, how do you handle something like that?
Well,
Because that's essentially request for doxing.
yeah, and that is a new vector that we haven't seen in mass. And these are the cases that bring up entirely
Right.
new things. So we have to study it. We have to see how we reacted, what happened with the network. But this goes back to the incentives. Like, we are incentivizing this very quick reaction, and it's taking away from some more of the considered work that we need to do to really diagnose what's happening in the moment. And it's such an interesting case study to see how that evolved over just 48 hours.
Yes,
And
that's one of the most fascinating news cycles or stories in the news cycle in quite
It
a
is.
while, because it's nuanced. There's many
it's
different
extremely
levels to
nuanced.
it,
Yeah,
and a lot of really knee-jerk reactions.
totally. But we helped that.
How'd you
But-
help it?
Well, it's just that's how some of the dynamics of the service work.
But is
And
that
those are
how
the
some of
things
the
we can
dynamics
change.
of the service, or is it the way people choose to use the service? Like, if you are a thoughtful person, you wouldn't just for instance, the original
Careful,
image that
Dingle.
was distributed came from an account that's now banned, right?
Mhm.
And so it was discovered that account was a troll account. How does that happen, and what was the thought process behind that? Because the image that they posted was a legitimate image. It really did happen. It was a part of an actual occurring event. So why did you ban the person or the troll account that put it up?
I don't know about this particular case, but it's likely that it was found. There's a lot of what you see on the surface Twitter and some of the actions that we take on the surface. But where we spend a lot of our enforcement is actually what's happening underneath.
Yes.
So
And you
in
are?
many cases, we have trolls or people, like the case that you mentioned, whose sole purpose is just to harass or abuse or spread particular information. And oftentimes these accounts might be connected, or they start one account, that gets banned, they start another account, but we can actually see this through a network lens, and we can actually see some of those behaviors. So that might have been one of the reasons. I'm not sure in that particular case, but you know,
How do you know? Do you know because of IP addresses? Do you know because of the
a variety of things. Like it could be trying to use the same phone number, same email address, IP addresses, device IDs, all these things that we can use to judge what's happening within the context. So we do have a lot of occurrences of suspending or temporarily suspending accounts because of activities across accounts, and that happens a ton. But what I mean in that we're helping this right now is like some of the incentives. Like just imagine seeing that unfold, and when you see someone with one take, it kind of emboldens something to follow along, and then this mob kind of rules.
Yeah.
So there has to be a way for us to incentivize a lot more considered and more nuanced introspection of what's going on.
Yeah, give everybody mushrooms. That's probably the only way.
I don't know.
How are you going to get people to be more considerate? I mean, I mean, this
Providing
is
more
essentially
context.
you're engineering social behavior, right?
Providing more context.
more context. How
Providing
so?
more context. Like an example, let's take Brexit, for example.
Okay.
So if I followed a bunch of accounts that like Boris Johnson, who was constantly giving me information about reasons to leave, I would probably only see that perspective.
Nigel Farage.
Yeah, and those a lot of folks just will not follow accounts that have a completely different perspective or a different influence. A number of people do, hopefully journalists do, but most people won't do that work. So this is the only tool we give people: follow an account. If, however, during that time you followed the hashtag vote leave, 95% of the conversation and the tweets you see are all reasons to leave, but there's a small percentage that shows a different perspective and that shows a different reasoning. We don't make it easy for anyone to do that, and that is a loss.
Easy for anyone to follow the alternative perspective.
Follow the hashtag, follow a topic, follow an interest. And because of that, we help build an echo chamber,
right,
and something that doesn't really challenge any perspective. And not to say that we should force that upon people, but we don't even make it easy for people to do in the first place. The way you do that today is you go to the Explore tab, you search for a hashtag, or you tap into a hashtag, and you can see all the conversation. But that's work, and most people just won't do the work. They'll stay in their timeline, they'll see what they need to see, and I can certainly imagine, why, if I'm just following a bunch of people who have the exact same take on this, it just continues to embolden, and they see nothing of a different perspective on the exact same situation.
What's interesting to me is the difference between Twitter and Instagram. Essentially, it's not just the photographs. What's weird that has happened was there's shitty people on Instagram as well. I mean, there's a lot of arguments and things along those lines, but they don't overwhelm the initial post. Whereas with Twitter,
It's on a different surface.
yeah,
Instagram is a post. I mean, it's a post. It's not really eliciting conversation.
but
It's
not
eliciting
just
comments.
that. It's difficult to follow the conversations.
I don't think there is a conversation.
Well, sometimes there is. Sometimes people are going back and forth about a particular subject that's discussed in the initial post, but it's not it's not very clear.
Yeah.
Whereas with Twitter, it's only conversation.
It's only conversation.
But even if there's a photograph, even if somebody posts a photograph on Twitter and has conversation under it, the photograph seems to be like of secondary importance.
Yeah, it's super fluid and super messy too. But
Yeah.
the thing is, on Instagram or any blog, you have this post, this statement, and you have comments underneath. Whereas with Twitter, everything is on the same surface.
Right.
It's all one surface.
Yeah, my friend Kurt Metzger likes that about Facebook. He says because in Twitter, he goes, I post something, and then all these fucking morons post something, and he goes, because you know, Kurt, he's very animated. He's like, and their shit looks like just like my shit. It's all together, all piled up. He goes, but if I post something on Facebook, he goes, I have this whole thing. Like, this is the original statement, and then underneath it, yeah, you fucking say whatever you want, but no one's reading that.
Yeah.
Like, they're reading the original initial post, and it's clear that there's a differentiation between the initial post and the secondary posts.
Yeah, I you know, there's room for both models, but this conversation, most conversations, it's not you making a statement and me just reacting to that.
Right.
Like our conversation evolves based on what we say. We can interrupt one another. We can, you know, we can completely change the subject. I can take control of the conversation, and the people who might find that interesting follow it, and the folks that don't just stop listening. Whereas you can't do that in a post-comment model.
Yeah, it's also, text is so limited. I mean, it's great for just getting out actual facts, but it's
also thinking. It's just so close to thinking. Like there's no composition.
Right.
You know, and that to me is the most beautiful thing about Twitter, but also something that, you know, can be uncomfortable. Like I can compose my life on Instagram. I can compose my thoughts within a Facebook post, and it can look so perfect. But the best of Twitter is just super raw, and it's right to the thinking process. And I just think that's so beautiful because it gets to consciousness. It gets to something deeper, and I think that deeper.
Well, how so? How is it different than a post on Instagram or a post on Facebook?
The speed demands, you know, the character constraint, the speed kind of just demands a more conscious, present, focused thinking versus like stepping back and
composing a letter.
Yeah, and composing a letter and thinking about all the outcomes.
But oftentimes people do compose it as a letter, and they break it up into separate 280 character posts.
Yeah, the threads.
What was the thought process in going from 140 to 280? Because one thing that I liked about 140 is that you can't be verbose. Yeah. You can't just ramble, and you know, like, it's great for comics because it forces us to write jokes like with economy of words.
Exactly. We found a lot of resonance with journalists because of headlines. We found a lot of resonance with comics because of the rhythm, and we found a lot of resonance with hip hop as well because of the bars and just the structure and the constraint allowed that flow. The thinking was we looked at our languages around the world, and there's some languages like German, 140 characters, you can't really say much. Can't really say much at all.
Right, because the words are so long.
There are some languages like Japanese, 140 characters is 140 words. And what was interesting about Japan was Japan is one of our largest countries. We're bigger than Facebook there.
Are you not bigger than Facebook in America?
No.
What the fuck? I don't even use Facebook. Sorry, Facebook.
I don't either.
I mean, I use it in terms of if I post something on Instagram, it goes to Facebook.
Yeah.
But when I go to Facebook, it just seems like a lot of. Well, this seems like Twitter too. A lot of arguing. But Twitter seems to be more fun, if that makes any sense. Even though there's a lot of chaos. One of my favorite things is when someone posts something stupid and then underneath it is a bunch of GIFs. Do you say GIFs or GIFs? How do you say GIF? Does anybody know?
GIFs.
How do you say it?
GIFs. I say GIFs.
Yeah.
The jury's out.
A bunch of GIFs that are hilarious.
Yeah.
Like just mocking someone relentlessly. Like, that is one of my favorite things about Twitter. When someone, like if Donald Trump posts something ridiculous, and then I'll go and I'll look at the responses, I'm like, bah! Like, I don't even care.
It's a public conversation.
Yes.
You can see how everyone reacts. But like, it's all the interesting thing about Twitter is there's not one Twitter. It's like you have politics Twitter, which can be super toxic. You have sports Twitter, you have NBA Twitter, you have MMA Twitter, you have UFC Twitter, you have K-pop Twitter, you have
Black
esports Twitter, you have Black Twitter.
That's Jamie's. Jamie loves Black
You
Twitter.
have all
I was
these
waiting
different
for this.
Twitters, and you have a completely different experience
Yes.
based on what Twitter you follow and what
Sure.
Twitter you participate in. Some
Yeah.
of them are like super engaging, super funny. Some of them are you want to walk away from it.
Yeah, I got to a certain point where I couldn't read replies anymore. It's just not that it's that toxic. The vast majority of interactions I have with people are super positive. Like
Yeah.
I mean, absolutely, like more than 99%. But it's I don't have time, and I don't have time to be constantly responding to people. And it just the sheer numbers. I think when I got around 3 million-ish followers, I'm like, I can't do this anymore. It's overwhelming. Like, I don't have the resources.
Yeah, I'm a huge believer in serendipity. So you look at your replies once, and you might see something that just like strikes you, and that's enough. You don't need to read through all of them.
Yeah,
And
sometimes,
it
but
just-
then you might miss something groovy.
You might, but I also believe the most important things come back up.
What I used to do a lot, I would go through my mentions, and when people would, I essentially used it as almost a news aggregator. I would go through my mentions, and people would post cool stories, and then I would retweet those. And so, because people knew that I would retweet them, they would send me a lot of cool stuff. So, because of that, because of reciprocating, I got a lot of really cool stuff sent my way.
Yeah, you're pushing more out, expand the network.
Yeah,
Yep.
and I reinforced it. I wanted to thank people for posting cool stuff, and they loved the fact that they would get a retweet, and so they would send me like interesting science stories or very bizarre nature stories, and I'd just be retweeting them all the time. But then after a while, I'm like, this is a lot of time. It's a lot of time. So now, essentially, what I do is I just post something, and I just kind of like, I just walk away.
But that speaks to what we want to incentivize more. We want more people contributing things that back to the network, back to the public conversation. And I know it doesn't feel like this today for most people, but my ideal is someone walks away from Twitter learning something, and they're actually learning something entirely new.
I think
And
that
it might be a new
happens lot.
perspective.
That happens a lot.
It probably happens more often than we
Depending on who
we
you
think.
follow.
Exactly. It's all dependent on the Twitter you follow,
Yeah.
and like the health Twitter is amazing. I learned I followed Rhonda Patrick and a bunch
She's
of folks who are
amazing.
into sauna
Yeah.
and Wim Hof and Ice Baths and Ben Greenfield, and you just follow them and you just get all this new information about alternative views of how to stay healthy, how to live longer, and I can't find that anywhere else in one place like that. And then it's not just them broadcasting. When they retweet something or when they tweet something, there's a whole conversation about it. So some people say this has not been my experience, or this is not true for me, or actually have you seen this connected thing? And I just go down this rabbit hole, and I learn so much, but that's not the experience for everyone.
No, well, yeah, it's not the experience for everyone, and it's not really, I don't think it's what everyone wants either. Sometimes people just like to go on there and talk shit. I mean, there's someone that's trapped in a cubicle right now, and they just want to go on there and get in arguments about gun control or, whether or not Nancy Pelosi's the devil.
Yep.
I mean, this is what, it serves a purpose for them.
Yeah.
The thing that gets strange, though, is who's to decide. There's this concept. There's a discussion, I should say, where some people believe that things like Twitter or Facebook or any forum where you're having a public discussion should be considered almost like a public utility. Like anyone has access to the electric power. Even if you're a racist, you still can get electricity. And some people think that you should have that same ability with something like Twitter or the same ability with something like Instagram. Obviously, we're in uncharted territory, and you are in uncharted territory.
Totally.
No one has been there before. So, who makes the distinctions when you see someone that's saying something that you might think is offensive to some folks? but not offensive to the person who's saying it. Maybe the person who's saying it feels like they need to express themselves and this is important to say. And how do you decide whether or not this is a valid discussion or if this is, air quotes, hate speech, which is there's some things that are hate speech, and there's sometimes people use the term hate speech, and it's just a cheap way to shut down a conversation.
Yeah. So the simple answer is we look at conduct. We don't look at the speech itself. We look at conduct. We look at how the tool is being used. And you're right in that. Like I think when people see Twitter, they see and they expect it to be a public square. They can go into that public square. They can say whatever they want. They can get on a pedestal, and people might gather around them and listen to what they have to say. Some of them might find it offensive and they leave. The difference is there's also this concept of this megaphone, and the megaphone can be highly targeted with Twitter as well.
Right.
So it's not the speech, it's how it's amplified.
So what do you do? It's like, let's say there's someone in the media. Let's say it's a prominent feminist, and then you have a bunch of people, or let's say just one person, and their Twitter feed is overwhelmingly attacking this prominent feminist, just constantly attacking her, calling her a liar, calling her this, calling her that. When do you decide this is harassment? When do you decide this is hate speech? How do you? I mean,
we look at the conduct.
This is a fictional account, right?
Yeah,
fictional person we're talking about. But in this, for instance, what would dictate something that was egregious enough for you to eliminate them from your platform?
Well, that's a heavy action. So that's the last resort. But we look at the conduct. We look at, oftentimes, as you said, like the probability of someone who is harassing one person, it's highly probable that they're also harassing 10 more people.
Right.
So we can look at that behavior. We can look at how many times this person is being blocked or muted or reported. And based on all those, all that data, we can actually take some action. But we also have to correlate it with the other side of that, because people go on and they coordinate blocks as well, and they coordinate harassment, and they coordinate, I'm sorry, not harassment, but reporting, reporting a particular account to get it shut down and to take the voice off the service. So these are the considerations we have to make, but it all starts with conduct, and oftentimes you'll see coordinated conduct, whether it be that one person opening multiple accounts or coordinating with multiple accounts that they don't own to, go after someone. And there's a bunch of vectors. People use retweet for that, the quote tweet for that a lot as well. Like, they'll quote tweet a tweet that someone finds, and they'll say, "Look at this idiot, Twitter, do your thing." And then just this mob starts and goes and tries to effectively shut that person down. So there's a bunch of tools we can use. The permanent suspension is the last resort. One of the things that we can do is we can downrank the replies. So any of these behaviors and conduct that look linked, we can actually push farther down in the reply chain. So it's all still there, but you might have to push a button to actually see it. You might have to show more replies to actually see this harassing account or what might look like harassing language.
And is this manually done?
No. This is all automated.
It's automated.
Yeah.
But how would you know?
A lot of the ranking and looking at amplification and looking at the network is automated.
Right, like in terms of downranking, is there a discussion as to whether or not this person's reply should be downranked? Like, how do you figure that out?
It's a machine learning and deep learning model, and they just
it's AI.
It's AI, and they learn, and we look at how these things are doing and where they make mistakes, and then we improve them. It's just constantly improving, constantly learning. And
does that feel like censorship to you, like automated censorship? Because who is to decide, other than people, whether or not something is valid?
Well, we're not looking at the speech in this particular case. We're looking at the conduct, like the conduct of like someone in fast velocity attacking someone else.
Okay.
Right. So those are the things that our technology allows. It changes the velocity. It changes how to broadcast a message that someone didn't really ask for and didn't want to hear. We don't touch. If I follow Joe Rogan, you'll see every single tweet. We don't touch it, right?
Right.
But that's an audience that you earn. But in your replies page, we have a little bit more room, because this is a conversation that starts up, and some people just want to disrupt it. And all we're saying is we're going to look at moving the disruption down. Not that it's hidden, but it's still there. But you just see it a little bit farther down.
Like what was the instance with Ari? I should text him right now. Get him to answer me in real time. But Ari Shafir got kicked off of Twitter because he said something to Bert, like, Bert, I'm going to fucking kill you. Bert Kreischer being our good friend. All of us are good friends. And he's like, you fucking dummy, I'm going to kill you, or something like that.
Took his record album. He said he was like steal them and break them on. He jokingly got mad.
Right.
That's
yeah.
Ari, though.
Bert was pretend. I think it was all bullshit, right? I don't think Bert really stole his
kept
records.
them. Yeah, he gave them back to him eventually.
Yeah. He's like, I'm going to fucking kill you.
So what happened there, what probably happened there, and I'm not sure the particular case, but what probably happened there is someone might have reported that tweet. One of our agents, human agents, without context to their friendship or that relationship, saw it as a violent threat and took action on it.
Right.
And those are the mistakes that we're going to make. That's why we need an appeals process. And
or Bert needs to keep his fucking greasy hands off Ari's records, right?
That's probably not going to happen. We need to make sure that we're reacting the right way. And look, we're going to make mistakes. We're trying to. The problem with this system right now is most of the work is actually and the burden is actually on the victims of abuse while they're getting harassed. So a lot of our system doesn't enforce or act unless these tweets are reported. Right, so we don't take suspension actions or removal of content actions unless it's reported. The algorithms rank and order the conversation, but they don't take suspension actions. They don't remove content. They might suggest to a human to look at this, who might look at our rules and look at the content and try to look at the context of the conversation and then take action. But we would like to move towards a lot more automated enforcement, but more importantly, how do we highlight, how do we amplify more of the healthier discussion conversation? Again, not removing it. We're going to a world, especially with technology like blockchain, that all content that exists, that is ever created, will exist forever. You won't be able to take it down. You won't be able to censor it. It won't be centralized at all. Our role is around what we recommend based on your interest and based on who you follow and helping you to get into that on-ramp. But if you look at the arc of technology, it's a given that anytime something is created, it's going to exist forever. This is what blockchain helps enable down the line. And we need to make sure that we're paying attention to that. And also realizing that, our role is like, how do we get people the stuff that they really want to see and that find valuable, that they'll learn from, that they'll make them think, that will help them evolve the conversation as well.
Now, when you say amplify the messages that you deem to be more positive, right? Like, how do you decide?
People decide it.
People decide.
People decide it based on are they engaging in replies? Are they retweeting it? Are they liking it? Are they?
But sometimes it's really negative. Like sometimes the people that are engaging it because they're attacking someone. So, is that valuable, or is it just unfortunate?
It's valuable. I mean, every signal is something that we can learn from and we can act on. But it's going to constantly evolve. I mean, it's these models that we have to build will constantly have to learn what the network is doing and how people are using it. And our goal is healthy contribution back to the public conversation. That is what we want. We want to encourage people into more bigger, informative, global conversations that they'll learn from.
Are you constantly aware of how much this is changing society, and that you are one of the 4 or 5 different modalities that are radically changing society, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, or any of these social media companies? It's radically changing the way people communicate with each other. Like there's a there's a giant impact on the way human beings talk and see each other, and the way we process ideas, and the way we distribute information. It's unprecedented. There's never been anything like that before. And you setting up something you think is going to be a group chat. Do you remember the early days when you would say, like, @Jack is going to the movies? You would say, like, that's how we would say it. I would say, @Joe Rogan is on his way to dinner. Like, that's how people would do
Status.
it. It's fucking, it was weird that somewhere along the line that morphed.
It morphed
And
because that's what the world wanted to do with it. That's where they wanted to take it.
Yeah.
And I just think it's so reflective of what the world is, and in some cases what the world wants to be.
So it's a pathway for thinking, just a pathway for people to get their thoughts out, but a really a powerful one, an unprecedented method of distributing information. It's really nothing ever been like this before.
No, and it won't. This mode of communicating will not go away. It'll just get faster. It will become a lot more connected, and that's why our work is so critical to figure out some of the dynamics at play that make it that cause more negative outcomes than positive outcomes.
I think about it because it's just a hugely significant thing. But I also think about it because of podcasts, because podcasts are in a similar way. Just no one saw it coming, and the people that are involved in it are like, what the fuck are we doing? Like me. I'm like, what am I doing? Like, what is this? Like, for me, it's like, ooh, boy, I get to talk to guys like Ben Greenfield and Jonathan Haidt and all these different people and learn some stuff. And I've clearly learned way more from doing this podcast than I ever would have learned without it. No doubt about it, unquestionably. But I didn't fucking plan this. So now all of a sudden there's this signal that I'm sending out to millions and millions of people, and then people are like, well, you have a responsibility. I'm like, oh, great. Well, I didn't want that. I didn't want a responsibility to what I distribute. I just wanted to be able to have a freak show. Just talk to people, like whatever, like there's certain people that I'll have on, whether it's Alex Jones or anyone that's controversial, where people will get fucking mad. Why are you giving this person a platform? I go, okay, I didn't think about it that way, and I don't think that's what I'm doing. I think I'm talking to people, and you can listen. But it's giving that person a platform, because they're saying, well, no, they'll tone down their, like Milo Yiannopoulos. That was one of the arguments people gave me. Like, he toned down his platform when he was on your show so he could get more people to pay attention to him. Like, okay, but he also talked about, that was one of the reasons why he was exposed, was my show, because he talked about that it's okay to have sex with underage boys if they're gay, because there's like a mentor relationship between the older gay man and the young, and people are like, what the fuck are you talking about? And that was a big part of why he's kind of been removed from the public conversation. That was one of the things. And then there's the discussion like, well, what is that? What is removing someone from the public conversation? If someone is very popular and they have all these people that like to listen to them, like, what is the responsibility of these platforms, whether it's YouTube or Twitter or anyone? Like, what is their responsibility to decide whether or not someone should or shouldn't be able to speak? And this is a thing that I've been struggling with, and I bounce around inside my own head, and I see that you guys struggle with it, and pretty much everyone does. YouTube does, and it's it is a hugely significant discussion that is left to a very relatively small amount of people. And this is why this discussion of what is social media, is it something that everybody has a right to? Or is it something that should be restricted to only people that are willing to behave and carry themselves in a certain way?
I believe it's something that everyone has a right to.
Everyone has a right to. But you still ban people. Like Alex Jones. You guys were the last guys to keep Alex Jones on the platform. You were the last ones. Yeah. And I believe you hung in there until he started harassing you personally, right?
No. He did not.
He came to your house. He banged. No.
No. He did very different things on our platform versus the others.
Okay.
So we saw this domino effect over a weekend of one platform banning him, and then another in very, very quick succession.
Right.
And people I think would have assumed that we would just have followed suit, but he didn't violate our terms of service.
Right.
And afterwards, he did, and we have a policy, and if there's a violation, we take enforcement actions. One might be asking the account holder to delete the tweet. Another might be a temporary suspension. Another might be a permanent suspension.
So, what you're saying? So, like, let's use it in terms of like him saying that Sandy Hook was fake. He did not say that on the platform. He did not say that on Twitter. He only said that on his show.
I don't know all the mediums he said it in.
What did he do?
But what we're looking at is a conduct and what he did on our platform.
So what did he do on your platform that was like that you all were in agreement that this is enough?
I'm not sure what the actual violations were, but we have a set number of actions, and if they keep getting if an account keeps violating terms of service, ultimately it leads to permanent suspension. And when all the other platforms were taking him off, we didn't find those. We didn't find those violations, and they weren't reported. But again, it goes back to a lot of our model. People weren't reporting a lot of the tweets that may have been in violation on our service, and we didn't act on them.
Right. Like a good instance is what's going on with Patreon. I'm sure you're aware of the Sargon of Akkad thing. He did a podcast a long time ago, I believe 6 months or so ago, where he used the N-word, and the way he used it is actually against white nationalists. And he also said a bunch of other stuff, and Patreon decided that what he said on a podcast was enough for them to remove him from the platform, even though he didn't do anything on their platform that was egregious. And also, they had previously stated that they were only judging things that occurred on their platform.
Yeah.
There's been a giant blowback because of that. Because people are saying, well, now you're essentially policing, and not based on his actions, just on concepts and the communication that he was using, the way he was talking.
Yeah.
That you're eliminating him from being able to make a living, and that you're doing this because he does not fit into your political paradigm. The way you want to view the world, he views the world differently. This is an opportunity for you to eliminate someone who you disagree with.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know the nuances of their policy, but like we have to pay attention to folks who are using Twitter to shut down the voices of others.
Right.
That's where it gets weaponized, and we also have to pay attention to where people are using it that put other folks in physical danger. And that is where we need to be most severe. But otherwise, everyone has a right to these technologies. And I think they also have a right to make sure that they have a very simple and open read of the rules. And we're not in a great state there. Our rules and our enforcement can be extremely confusing to people.
What has been the one thing that came up that was perhaps the most controversial? Like, I know my friend Sam Harris was trying to get you guys to ban Donald Trump. He was saying if you follow your terms of service...
I just did a podcast with him actually as well. It should come out today or tomorrow.
He's a fascinating guy, Sam Harris. I love him to death. But what he was trying to do was like saying, hey, he's threatening nuclear war. Like he's saying, hey, Korea, my bombs are bigger than your bombs. Like, what else does the guy have to do to get you to remove him from the platform? When you guys saw that, what was your reaction to that? Was there an internal discussion about actually banning the president of the United States?
Well, so two things there. One, it was the context that presidents of this country have used similar language in different mediums. They use it on radio, they use it on television. It's not just through Twitter. And even if you were to look at the presidency of Obama, it wasn't exactly the same tone and this exact same language, but there were threats around the same country. And we have to take that context into consideration. So the second thing is that we need the most controversial aspect of our rules and our terms of service is probably this clause around public interest and newsworthiness, where powerful figures or public figures might be in violation of our terms of service, but the tweet itself is of public interest.
Yes.
There should be a conversation around it. And that is probably the thing that people disagree with the most, and where we have a lot of internal debate. But we also have some pretty hard lines. If we had a global leader, including the President of the United States, make a violent threat against a private individual, we would take action. We always have to balance that with, like, is this something that the public has interest in? And I believe generally the answer is yes. It's not going to be in every case, but generally the answer is yes, because we should see how our leaders think and how they act.
And essentially,
That informs voting. That informs
Yes.
the conversation. That informs whether we think they're doing the right job, or we think that they should be voted out.
well, it's very important to see how someone uses that platform, and when someone uses it the way he uses it, and then becomes president and continues to use it that way, that's when people are like, "What?"
He's been consistent. I think he joined in 2009, 2012, and
Yeah.
you look at all of his tweets all the way back then, and it's pretty consistent to today.
Yeah, I mean, he likes to insult people on Twitter. It's fun
does.
for him.
He does.
It's just, I never thought he would keep doing it. I thought once he became president, maybe he'd just lock it down, try to do a good job for the country, and then, after 4 years or 8 years, just go back to his old self. Fuck.
Welcome.
You, fuck the world, fuck this.
Yeah.
But no, he's just it's just, in one way it's hilarious. See, as a comedian, I think it's awesome because it's so hilariously stupid. It's so preposterous that he even has the time to talk about Jeff Bezos's affair and the fact that he got caught with the National Enquirer getting text messages and calls him Jeff Bozo. Like, don't you have shit to do, man?
Yes.
But as a comedian, I am a gigantic fan of folly, almost against my better judgment. I like watching. I like watching disasters. I like watching chaos. When I see nonsense like that, I'm like, oh Jesus! Like I'm drawn like a moth to a flame. But on the other part of me is like, man, this sets a very bizarre tone for the entire country, because one of the things about Obama, like Obama or hate Obama, is he was very measured, very articulate, obviously very well educated. And I think that aspect of his presidency was very good for all of us, because he represented something that was of a very high standard in terms of his ability to communicate, his access to words, the way he measured his words and held himself. I think that's good for us. Like,
it's aspirational.
Well, it's like, look at that guy. He's talks better than me. That's why he's the president. But when you see Trump, he doesn't talk better than me. He doesn't use Twitter better. He's just this fucking madman.
But isn't it important to understand that and to see it and
exactly.
hopefully that informs opinions and actions?
100%. That's my point. That's my point, is like that this is this weird gray area where I think overall I definitely support your decision to not ban him for violating your terms of service. Like, we need to know.
Yeah.
And it's, how do you know how many accounts are bots? How do you know how many accounts are from a Russian troll farm?
Yeah.
Like, how do you know that?
So this is a real challenge and something that we're trying to wrap our heads around. But like, one of the things we're trying to do is like, let's scope the problem down a bit and let's use the technology we have available to us, like Face ID, like Touch ID, like the biometric stuff, to identify the humans. Let's identify the humans first.
So how do you use that? Because Face ID is not really available. Is it available to you guys? Do you just leak something that you shouldn't have told me?
No. We haven't used it yet, but you can use it for things like, is this a human operating this?
For Apple Pay. You can use it for that. So
it's completely locked into the local device. We don't have access to images of your face or whatnot, but the operating system can tell us that this is the legit owner of this phone, and therefore it is a human. And technology always has to change. People will find ways around that and whatnot. But if we go the opposite direction and we look for the bots, the problem with looking for the bots is people assume that they just come through our API, but the scripting has become extremely sophisticated. People can script the app, can script the website, and make it look very, very human. So we're going after this problem first, trying to identify the humans as much as we can, utilizing these technologies. None of this is live right now. These are considerations that we're making and trying to understand like what the impact would be and how we might evolve it. But we need to, because that information would provide context for someone like, this is an actual human that I'm talking to, and I can invest more time in it, or I can just ignore the thing because it's meaningless.
Now, is Apple willing to share that with you? I mean, when you're talking about biometrics, fingerprints, or face ID?
No, not the data. It's just the operating system verifies that
there's an individual.
It's an individual, and it's unlocking. When you use the our Cash App uses this, right? So Square's Cash App, when you want to make a transfer to someone, when you want to send someone money, or when you want to buy Bitcoin, we turn on Face ID and you verify that you are you and you are the owner of the phone, and then it goes. We don't get images of your face. We don't see who you are.
Oh, that's what you want me to think. I know what you're saying. Yeah.
That's all locked down by the operating system, and that's what
Right.
it should be.
Right, sure. Has there ever been any consideration to not allowing people to post anonymously?
Well,
Because I like what you said earlier about journalists and whistleblowers. That is
yeah, but
critical.
look at platforms that have a real names policy. Look at Facebook.
Right.
Are the problems any different?
I don't know because I don't go there. But from what I understand, there's still a lot of arguing there.
It's the same.
A lot of political arguing.
They're
of
the
old
same
people.
vectors, same patterns.
Aren't they older? It's like older in general.
It seems. I also am not really hanging out there, but it seems a little bit older.
It's a lot of Grammys looking at pictures of their kids, grandkids, and stuff. And
That's what it was made
arguing
for.
about immigrants.
It's connecting with the people that you know, and that to me is the biggest difference with Twitter. It's connecting with the people you don't know,
Well,
and you find interesting, and like it's around topics and stuff that you find that you want to learn more about.
when you saw Zuckerberg testifying and in realizing like how this platform is being used and what are the dangers of this, and then you see these senators that really don't know what the fuck the technology is, or
Yeah.
it really highlights how we're entering
gap.
into this really, well, not just a gap in the critical understanding of how these things work and what they are, in terms of like how these really important politicians, who are the ones who are making these decisions as to whether or not someone has violated laws or whether or not something should be curbed or regulated, and they don't really even understand what they're talking about.
No, I mean there's
So few people do.
because they're not using it directly. They're not using it in the way that people are using it every single day, and they
Right.
don't have the same experience that people have every single day. And you know, in terms of regulatory and our regulators and our governments, I think the conversation is often about how regulators will come in and start writing rules and setting expectations for how companies or services might behave. But there's a role for the company to educate, and there's a role for the company to educate on like what technology makes possible, whether it be positive and also some of the negatives that become possible as well. So I think we have a role to help educate and to help make sure that we're, really we're pushing towards what I think the job of regulator is, which is number one, protect the individual, number two, level the playing field, and make sure that those two things are not compromised by special interests trying to protect their own domain or profits or dominance within a particular market.
What do you mean by level the playing field?
Level the playing field so that an individual has the same opportunity that someone else might have or a company might have.
So, okay, so like anybody
So
can have a
anyone
Twitter
could-
account.
Anyone can have a Twitter account, and they have at least an equal opportunity to contribute to it. And whatever they do with it will change the outcome. Some people might become very popular because they're saying stuff people want to hear. Some people won't see any following whatsoever because they're not adding anything original or interesting or different in terms of perspective.
Where do you see this going? When you look at these kind of emerging technologies, not so necessarily emerging anymore, established now, but still, a new thing in relative terms of human history. Where do you see this going? And does it get more intrusive? Does it get deeper into our lives? Like, what when you look at new technologies like augmented reality and things along those lines, do you see new possibilities and new things that could make things even more complicated?
I mean, we just have to assume that we naturally use more and more technologies, more and more things become open, more and more things increase their velocity. There's more communication, not less. Like this is not going away, and it's just a question of what we do with it. So where I want it to go is, and where I want Twitter specifically to go is, I think it's existential right now that we have global conversations about some things that will become crisis. Climate change being one of them. There's no one nation state that's going to solve that problem alone. Economic disparity being another. The rise of AI and job displacement and just like us offloading decisions to these algorithms. Those are things that no one nation, no one community is going to solve alone. It takes the entire world to do so. So I want to make sure that we're doing our best to get people seeing these global conversations and ideally participating in them, because it helps us solve the problems faster. I just believe that more open society allows us to solve problems much faster.
So you, in many ways, see Twitter as having some sort of a social responsibility in this discussion.
Totally. Yeah, and I think a big part of it is like right now, like how are we ensuring that there is more healthy contribution to that global conversation? And I just think it's so critical that we start talking about the things that are facing all of us, not just one nation. I do think, that's where our current model really puts the world at a disadvantage, because it incentivizes more of the echo chambers, which lead to things like nationalism instead of taking the broader picture and looking at what's happening around the world to all people, to all of humanity.
What do you do, though, to balance the conversation, or what responsibility do you think you have to balance the conversation in terms of the way conservatives view it versus the way liberals and progressives view it?
Balance it.
But is there a responsibility? Do you have a responsibility, or is it just leave it up to the people and let them figure it out the same way they figured out hashtags and everything else?
I think we have a responsibility to make it easier to do that.
Easier? How so?
Right now, it's just too hard. Most people will not
venture outside of their
particular
bubble.
mindset. They will not venture out. They will not break their bubble.
Right.
But because it's right now on the surface, it's just so hard to do that. I can only follow accounts, and I have to look into, and just imagine trying to get an understanding of your own politics. People can't just look at your bio. They have to look through all your tweets. They have to listen to a bunch of your podcasts and whatnot. And that's a bunch of work. If we shift it more towards topics and interest, at least we have the potential to see a bunch more perspectives.
How do you do that, though?
The simplest thing is follow a hashtag, follow a topic. Why can't you just follow Warriors Twitter or NBA Twitter? Why do you have to go and find all the coaches and the players and the team? So we can do that. We can help make that a whole lot easier for folks.
So there's something like Brexit or something like that. So if you go to hashtag Brexit, you're going to get the whole conversation. You're going to get the pros, the cons, the left, the right, the whole deal, the centrists. You're going to get everybody versus following the people that you already follow that agree with what you think.
Yeah. The probability is higher that you'll get more. You'll get more variety of perspective. And don't even follow Brexit. Follow Vote Leave if you want to leave. Mm-hmm. But within that topic, there might be some dissenting opinions, and you get to choose whether those inform you, whether that emboldens your position or not. But and again, I'm not saying that we should force that upon it, but it's not easy to even do that today, right? The only tool we give you is finding and following the accounts, and that.
But people search hashtags. They do search hashtags, right?
They don't. They stay on their timeline. I mean, it is a small percentage of people. The people that really know Twitter know how to do that, but most people. They follow an account, and they stay in their timeline. And what their world is their timeline.
Hashtags can be corrupted, too. I mean,
totally, they can be gamed. They can be gamed and taken over.
I took over hashtag vegan cat. Go to hashtag vegan cat now.
What is that?
That's a wrap. That's mine now. I had a bit in my last Netflix special about a woman who said a bunch of horrible things to me. Because I put a picture up on Instagram of some deer meat, and I wrote, "This is some meat from a deer that liked to kick babies and was about to join ISIS." And then I wrote hashtag vegan, which was a mistake, right? To write hashtag vegan, but the hashtag vegan people went fucking crazy and came after me because I entered into their timeline with meat.
There it is.
Now if you go to hashtag vegan cat, it's all either pictures of see, like it says Joe Rogan, right? Thank you. I haven't laughed that hard in a while. Hashtag vegan cat. It's people that are feeding their fucking cat vegan food, and they're all dying. And in the special, I say every cat looks like it's living in a house with a gas leak. Like they're all like laying down, like where the fuck is the real food? But this is real. Like this
generates a conversation.
But the thing is, if someone does something like that, like you can like pick a person, you know, whatever that person is, whatever they're doing. If they have a hashtag that they utilize all the time for their movement or whatever, someone could mock them and then use that. And if it's a public figure or someone who's got a prominent voice, then all of a sudden that hashtag becomes, people just take it over and start mocking them with that hashtag.
But it has to be done in mass. I mean, it has to be coordinated. And sometimes people like figure out how to game the system and coordinate it amplify that message in a unfair way. And that's what our systems are trying to recognize.
How sick did that cat look? That poor fucking cat. That was a real one. That was a real hashtag vegan cat.
Wow.
Those poor bastards. So when you look back at emerging social media, like we go all the way back to MySpace, right? MySpace, you got Tom. Tom was sitting there in your top 8, and you know people would like post music that they liked, and it was never political. It was often very surface, and for comics, it was a great way to promote shows, and it was an interesting way to see things.
Yeah.
But it was like the seed that became Twitter or Facebook or any of these.
This is one of them. I think we, at least for us, like we got more of our roots from AOL Instant Messenger and ICQ.
ICQ.
Because it was, you know, you remember the status message where you said like I'm in a meeting or I'm listening to this music or I'm watching a movie right now.
Yeah.
That was the inspiration.
Oh.
And what we took from that was being able to, like, if you could do that from anywhere, not bound to a desk, but you could do that from anywhere. You could do it from your phone, and you could just be roaming around and say, you know, I'm at Joe Rogan's studio right now. That is cool. I don't need my computer. I'm not bound to this chained to this desk. I can do it from anywhere. And then the other aspect of Instant Messenger was, of course, chat. So one of the things that the status would do is you might say, like, you know, I'm listening to Kendrick Lamar right now, and I might hit you up on chat and say, like, what do you think of the new album? But now it's all public, so it's just everyone can see it. That's the biggest difference, and that to me is what Twitter is. MySpace was profiles, and you know, people organized around these profiles and this network that developed between people, and that is Facebook. Facebook optimized the hell out of that, and they scaled the world. We were something very different. We started with that simple status, and then people wanted to talk about it, and we decided that it should be on the same surface. It shouldn't be subservient to the status. It should be part of that flow, and that's what makes Twitter, you know, so fluid.
Now, when you look at this sort of metamorphosis or this evolution between those initial social media, whether it's AOL, Instant Messenger, that eventually became like ICQ, and what was that one that we would use, that gamers would use, that it was like a live stream sort of message board? No, it was like...
For a while, people were using TeamSpeak, but I don't
No,
know if that's when
wasn't
you were playing.
that.
That's more recent.
Wasn't TeamSpeak. It was... like you would go there and share files and stuff, and people would go, like, if I used to play a lot of online video games, and we'd play on teams, and we have teams go and play other teams, and you would use this sort of it wasn't a message board because it was all in real time. What the fuck was it called? No. All right, forget it. Anyway, guys would go there, and you could send people files through it, and you know, teams would go and meet, and it would be a chat, like an online chat that would be in real time.
I mean, we have a lot of our roots in AOL and Messenger, but also like IRC, Internet Relay Chat, and Usenet, which were the, you know, these old Internet 70s technologies.
IRC is what I was talking about.
IRC?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Internet Relay Chat is like this giant chat room that anyone can join, and so range around topics. And
that's what's interesting about that is you can see people typing, you see it occurring in real time, you see it popping up in real time.
Yep.
You know, I wonder, like, what is the next evolution of this? Because no one saw anything going from ICQ to Twitter. No one saw anything going from that to Instagram and to where we're at right now, where it really does flavor the conversation of our entire culture. I mean, before it was just a thing that was happening on people's computers.
Yeah.
Now it's a thing that's happening on people's computers and now phones and now your whole life. It's a very different influence.
Yeah.
And I wonder, because everything does accelerate. Things constantly move forward and become more and more integrated into our life experience. And I wonder what is the next stage of this.
Like the secular trends, and you look at technology, and you look at technologies like blockchain, for instance, and I think we're moving to a world where anything created exists forever. That there's no centralized control over who sees what. These models become completely decentralized, and all these barriers that exist today aren't as important anymore.
What do you think of something like Gab? Like, Gab seems to be a response to the fact that some people are getting banned from other platforms, and they're just allowing anybody to come on and say anything they want.
Yep.
The downside of that is, of course, the most horrible people are going to be able to say anything they want with no repercussions. The good side is anybody can say whatever they want.
Yeah, I haven't studied them too much, but I do know that they have taken action on accounts as well. They have suspended accounts, and they have a terms of service as well.
What have they suspended accounts for? Do you know?
I don't know. It's probably conduct related. It might be doxing.
Probably, right?
But it's just a question of, like, the rules, and if you agree to the rules, then you sign up for the service, and if not, there will be other services. But like you look at the trends, and I think certainly things become a lot more public. Certainly things become a lot more open. Certainly the barriers and the boundaries that we have in place today become less meaningful. And I think there's a lot of positives in that, and I also think there's a lot of danger that we need to be mindful of.
Now, you as a CEO, as a guy who's running this thing, what has this experience been like for you? Because I gotta imagine that it wasn't anything that you predicted. No one predicted Twitter, right?
Yeah.
So to all of a sudden have this responsibility.
Twitter changed everything. I mean,
And you're a young guy. How old are you?
42.
That's young. To be in control of that much, and to have it over the time of, what has it been, 11 years?
13 years. We'll be 13 in March, yeah.
Yeah, so you were really fucking young.
Yeah.
Like, what has that been like for you?
It's been both beautiful and scary and uncomfortable and learning. It's just been a ton of learning and evolving, and like it shows me every single day where I need to push myself and what I don't know. And I think a big part is like just the realization that we're not going to be able to do this alone, and I don't think we have to either. These are what the technologies continue to allow, is we can. If we have to have all the answers around enforcement or policy, whatnot, we're not going to serve the world. We have aspirations to serve every single person on the planet, and we have aspirations to, be the first consideration for the global public conversation. And if we're the bottleneck for all this, we're not going to reach those aspirations. So it's just thinking deeply about how we might distribute more of this work and decentralize more of it, and look at the platform itself, and like what we need to change to reach that reality. And I think we got to look really deep and foundational. It goes back to your question on 140. One of the things that we saw was we shifted to 280 characters, and that this 140 characters is so sacred. It became this cultural thing, and I was in love with it, and so many people are in love with it. But one of the things we noticed as we moved to 280 is that the vast majority of tweets that are broadcast don't go above 140, even with that limitation raised. But where they do go above 140 is in replies. When people reply, they tend to go over the 140 character limit and even bump up into the 280 limit. And what we've seen it allow is just more nuance in the conversation. It allows people to give more context and kind of just get their experience on the table a little bit more, whereas 140 did not allow that. So we have seen that increase the health of those conversations and the discussion. So it's stuff like that we need to question and not hold so sacred.
Is there any consideration to expanding it further?
Not right now. We're
How about 1 million characters? No?
well, we don't have edit tweets right now, so
Do you think that that's good or bad?
Well, if you can't edit 140 characters, you're going to be really pissed off if you write 1 million characters and can't edit those things.
You know what I would like? I would like edit, the ability to edit, like if you make a typo or something like that, but also the ability for people to see the original.
Yeah.
Like edit, but see the original. Like
Yeah.
say...
We're looking at
you-
exactly
if you-
that.
Oh, really?
We're looking at exactly that. The reason we don't have edit in the first place is we were born on SMS. We were born on text messaging. When you send a text, you can't take it back.
Right.
So when you send a tweet, it goes to the world instantaneously.
Right.
You can't take it back. So when
But
we
doesn't
have
that
to...
exist anyway? I mean, no matter what, if you send someone something, even if you on Instagram, people are going to know the original.
Yeah, they screenshot it and they,
Yeah.
they do their thing. But like, you could build it such that maybe we introduce a 5-second to 30-second delay in the sending, and within that window you can edit.
I'm going to need more time than that, dude. If I fuck something up, someone has to tell me.
But
hey, man, you misspelled that word. Ah, shit. Did I? God damn it.
The issue-
sometimes autocorrect gets you.
Totally, but the issue with going longer than that, it takes that real-time nature and the conversational flow out of it. So
Yes.
then we're delaying these tweets, and like when you're watching UFC or you're watching like Warriors basketball, a lot of the great Twitter is just in the moment, just it's the roar of the crowd. It's looking across at someone you're in this virtual stadium with and just saying oh my God, that shot. Can you believe it? And
But isn't clarity more important, because you're not
it
going to
depends
give
on
up.
the context.
Yeah,
It
you're
depends on
still
the
going to have
context.
the ability to communicate quickly,
Yeah,
but
and
you also have the ability to clarify.
that's where we need to really pay attention, because if you're in the context of an NBA game, you want to be fast and you just want to be of the moment, and you want to be raw. But if you're in the context of considering what the president just did or making a particular statement, then you probably need some more time, and we can be dynamic there.
What's interesting to me is how few people use video. Like, I thought when you guys have video on Twitter, I'm like, wow, a bunch of people are going to be making videos and putting those up on Twitter. And it's not. It's not that often.
It depends on who you follow. It's huge for some aspects of Twitter. It's less so in others. But
What aspects is it huge for?
a lot of sports. I mean, we see a lot of just the replays and the recaps and
Right, for sure. Yeah.
Aspects of a particular shot that people want to comment on. I think it's dangerous for us to focus too much on the medium, whether it be images or GIFs or video. It's more about the conversation around it. That's what we want to optimize for.
It's definitely very popular for sports and folly, and there's a bunch of animal attack videos that you could, Nature's Metal's a good one, and Hold My Beer, that's another good one. I mean, it's all videos, but what I meant was people making a video talking about something.
Yeah.
This is what I was trying to say. What I think is this and that and blah, blah, blah. You don't see a lot of that. And I thought maybe that would be something that people would adopt more.
It's a different speed. I think the consumption of video, I mean, you see this in the technology right now. People are subtitling every single video because people might be in an environment where they can't turn the audio on. Or a video, I have to scrub through to see what's interesting.
Right.
With text, I can just see it, and it allows for a lot of serendipity to find something that I probably wouldn't have seen unless I watched the whole damn video. So the ability to clip something, the ability to index in, I think is really critical. So it's not about the format, it's about the use case and the context that you're in.
Now, going back to the responsibility that you guys have, and you in particular, when this became what it is now, and when it became evident that it became this gigantic way of changing the way human beings communicate with each other, was there ever any regret, or was there ever a moment where you're like, what the fuck have I gotten myself into?
I mean, I'm always reflective of where I am and what I'm doing. I think the biggest has been around twofold. One, how the dynamics of the service allow it to be weaponized in order to silence someone else or to drive them off the service entirely, which goes against the entire concept of free speech and free participation. Like we just can't stand for that. We need to make sure that everyone feels that they have an opportunity at a voice, and when you have these coordinated attacks, it's not fair. The second is around, this concept of an echo chamber and a filter bubble. I don't feel personally good about that. I don't feel that we thought that through enough in the early days. I think we should have moved towards biasing the service towards topics and interests much, much sooner than we're now considering doing.
Now, when you have these considerations, when you take these actions, do you consult with psychologists or sociologists or historians or people that try to put in perspective for you what the ramifications of each individual move would be?
I try to read as much as possible. I try to talk to as many people as possible, just get a completely different perspective. And
is there any internal disagreement about actions that you take?
Oh yeah, there's always debate. There's always debate, but I think my role is to ask questions and make sure what is our goal here? What are we trying to do?
And that evolves.
That evolves. Like, and is this over the long term going to be a net positive for all humans, all humanity? Like, how do we balance the considerations of how we serve everyone, and like how do we get down to something? How do we get down to a fundamental answer, an essential answer? And that to me is where the real truth is when you can get to something foundational. But I like having conversations with as many people from as many different fields as possible and getting the perspective on it. So I ask questions all the time. It's
interesting the way you're phrasing this too, that you are looking at this as a method to save or to help people, to serve people. Mm-hmm. You're looking at this as a way that you can benefit society. The society can benefit from your platform, can benefit from this ability to communicate. You're not just looking at it as a tech company that has to remain profitable. And that's one of the more interesting things about tech companies to me. I mean, there's been a lot of criticism, maybe justified in some ways, that tech companies all lean left. But what is interesting to me is that name another corporation that willingly, of its own choice, takes that into consideration, that they want to serve the world and serve culture in a beneficial way, regardless of profit.
Yeah.
I mean, because you're not really selling anything, right? You guys have a platform. Obviously, it's financially viable, but you're not selling things.
Well,
right?
I mean, we do our models based off people's attention.
Yeah.
And they're paying us with their attention, and that's extremely valuable and something that we need to really, really honor. But I agree with you. I mean, like, look at Tesla. I just listened to the recent earnings call, and one of the things that Elon said was, look, there are two reasons for Tesla. Number one is to advance different sources of energy and more renewable sources of energy, because it's a fundamental and existential crisis that's facing all humanity. And number two is to advance autonomy, because it'll save lives and give people time back. And then you start talking about how to make that possible, and that's where our business comes in. How do we make that possible? And we have a great business. We need to improve a bunch of it, but it serves what we think are larger purposes, which is serving the public conversation. We want to see more global public conversations. We want our technology to be used to make the world feel a lot smaller, to help see what common problems we have before us, and ideally, how we can get people together to solve them faster and solve them better.
You also seem to be embracing this responsibility that you're helping to evolve culture, and this is part of the providing this method to communication, it's helping to evolve culture. And this is something that is really only applicable to tech companies in some strange way. And it's weird that so many of them share this. Like, I was personally a little weirded out when Google took out "Don't be evil." Like, that was a big part of their operating model.
Did they take that out?
Yes. Yes. Right? Make sure I don't want to get sued. I'm pretty sure they removed that from, what would you call that? Their operational directive? Like, what is...
It was in the code of conduct.
Code of conduct. And it's not there anymore, right? They removed it.
It says, yeah, there's an article that says they removed the clause.
And
this is kind of a weird thing to tell people not to be evil.
It's weirder to take it out once you've already said it. It's way weirder to say, fuck it, we were wrong.
There's another way of saying that, though.
They changed it to do the right thing.
Yeah.
Oh, well, what does that mean? The fuck does do the right thing mean? Do the right thing so you can make more money? You know? Like, hey, we want to make money, we'll do the right thing. It makes more money.
Yeah, that's why, like, that's why this openness is so critical. I mean, that's why, like, the public to me, the public conversation is so important, is we can talk about stuff like that. And, like, there will be companies forming today that look at objectives and mandates like that and base their whole culture around it. And is that the right idea? Well, I don't know, but if we're not talking about it, we won't be able to answer that question.
What's also interesting, because Google is so all-encompassing, right? You have Gmail, you have Android. I mean, they are the #1 operating system for mobile phones in the world, on top of being a search engine. There's so much involved in that company. And again, like almost all tech companies, they heavily lean left. And because they had that "don't be evil" as a part of their code of conduct, it seemed like something that was a good idea to have.
Yeah.
And it sort of defined what I was talking about, that tech companies are uniquely progressive.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what makes that. I think no matter what, like, the internet allows for a very healthy skepticism of nearly everything.
Yeah.
I'm from Missouri. It's a show me state.
Are you really from Missouri?
Yeah, I'm from St. Louis, Missouri. We're all skeptics. My mom was a Democrat. My dad was a Republican. My dad listened to Rush Limbaugh and Hannity all the time. I found myself somewhere in the middle. But one of the things I appreciated, we had a ton of fights and arguments and yelling matches around the kitchen table, but, like, I appreciate the fact that we could have them, and I felt safe to do so, and I didn't feel like, I mean, obviously they're my parents, but they weren't judging me because of what I said. And
they didn't force you to be a Republican or a Democrat.
They didn't force me to think a particular way. You know, like, I think they were good at least showing different perspectives, even in this union that they have. And I don't know, it developed a skepticism in me that I think is healthy. And I have a lot of skepticism of companies like ours and leaders like me. I think that's right. I think that's right, and people should. And I was formed through a lot of the ideals of the internet. I just fell in love with what it made possible, and I never ever want to run afoul of those ideals and the removal of barriers and boundaries and the connection that we have because of it. And I think often and reflect often about my role and the centralization of my role and of our company. And I want to figure out and help figure out, like, how we can continue to add massive value and be an amazing business, which is us and will always be us, but at the same time be a participatory force in this greater good that the internet has really started. And it's not led by any one individual or any one company, and that's the beauty of it. And I want to make sure that we find our place in that, and we can also contribute massively to it. And then I think we can. It's just going to take a lot of work, a lot of introspection, and a lot of experimentation, a lot of making mistakes and failures too.
Well, and it's very encouraging that you have that attitude, because you know, a lot of people, I think, in a similar situation would try to control the narrative. They would try to reinforce their own particular perspective on things and try to get other people to adopt it or try to push it. And I think it's very important to just have this open discussion. And I think it's very important to review your own thoughts and ideas. And one of the best ways to do so is through put it out there.
Put it out there and have other people review. Peer review is a great process, and
that's flavored the way this podcast has evolved more than probably anything.
Yeah. That's the thing. I mean, you did this because you want to learn from people, and the platform that you've created, millions get to learn from it as well. And that's just so amazing. Like I learn from your podcast all the time, and that's what technology makes possible. But with that power also comes ramifications, and if we're not talking about the ramifications, and like at least being open about what we know and what we don't know. And I think we state and post a lot more of what we know rather than what we don't know. And that is so interesting.
Why don't you guys steal "Don't Be Evil"? Put that in your own shit. Fuck you, Google.
I don't know if that's going to help anything. What is that telling our employees to do?
Don't be evil. It's real simple. Don't be a dick.
Yeah, I mean, like, how do we get deeper and just like you know, seeing more conversation around what is quote unquote evil? Have
you guys considered expanding your influence in other venues? Like, you know, Google started off as a search engine. Now it's fucking everything. Have you guys considered doing something similar?
I think we probably did too much of that early on, and that's what led to a bunch of issues. from a corporate standpoint. We're just trying to do too much
Like what?
too many times. I don't know. We're trying to be everything to everyone, and like we had a video thing, and we had we're looking at gaming stuff and messaging, and it lost focus of what we were good at. What we're good at is conversation, and what we're good at is public conversation. So we now have, as a company, we have just such an amazing focus on what that means and how that evolves. And there's some really cool things that we can do there. Like we have this app called Periscope. And one of the things that we're discovering is like a lot of people are using it to podcast. A lot of people are using it to share their thoughts, and these people come in and they chat and have a conversation. And one of the things we did recently is we allowed the audio to play in the background. It's super simple, but what we found was that people didn't necessarily want to watch the video of people talking. They just want to hear what they're saying. And that just opened the door for more types of use cases. And there's some really exciting things coming out with Periscope that I think add a new dimension to what conversation looks like and how it is experienced and how it evolves. And those are the things I get really excited about. It's like how can we make conversation better, and how how do we make it feel more live? How do we make it feel more electric? And how do we bring new technology into it that just opens a door for an entirely new way of talking. And that's the thing that I think has been most educational to me about Twitter is as we talked about, we started with this idea of sharing what was happening around you, and then people told us what they wanted it to be, and it became this conversational medium. It became this interest networked. And it became a thing that was entirely new, and we observed it, and we learned more and more of what it wanted to be. And as we get deeper and deeper, that we're going to be surprised by some of the technologies that we thought would be used in this way. But it turns out that the massive use case and the resonant use case and the fundamental use case is going to be created right before our eyes by the people using it.
Now, did you guys acquire Periscope, or was
we acquired Periscope? Yeah.
And what was the thought process when you were acquiring it?
We like the live nature of it. We like the broadcast aspect.
Why keep it as Periscope? Why not have it be like Twitter Live?
There's a specific community on Periscope, and I think it's interesting from an experimentation standpoint. We can play with ideas there. It's a smaller
Scott
playground.
Adams, I think, uses it better than anybody. He gets on it.
he's really good at it, and he's one that I think has figured out, just the knack behind it. He starts every one of them with this simultaneous sip of coffee, so he gets his listeners and his viewers engaged right away, and then he just goes on, and then every now and then he'll look at the comments and riff off them. So
he lets people build up too. Like he'll announce that he's going on, and then he'll wait a little while, say hello to some people.
Yep.
Then once a bunch of people are in the room, then he starts talking.
Yeah, and I find that so interesting, because that is the future of conversation. It's looking at the patterns. It's looking at what people are trying to do with the thing, and then you build technology around it, and that becomes the next big thing. And we have to hone our power of observation, hone our power of like connecting the dots and looking at all the patterns and what people are. What's the question behind the question? What's the statement behind the statement that they're making? And if we can get good at understanding some of those fundamental essential things, then we've at least created the probability that most people in the world will find it useful and find it valuable.
Joey Diaz is the other person that uses Periscope better than anybody alive, but he just gets
I haven't
high.
seen his.
He just gets baked. He just gives you morning. What does he call it? Morning bong hit.
The morning joint.
The morning joint. Yeah, he'll smoke a joint or smoke a bowl in the morning, and then just sort of let everybody know
Doing
what's going on in his
something
mind.
doing something in sync with more people is interesting. Like we've had some folks who are interested in doing meditations through Periscope.
Oh, that's a
And
great idea.
You can't. I mean, if you look at the surface level, you can't imagine anything more boring than like watching someone meditate. But if you're actually meditating with them, there's something powerful about it. And like, what can we do to improve that experience?
What about people using it for group workouts? Is anyone doing that?
I'm sure it's happening. I haven't seen it personally, but I'm sure it's happening.
How much more people do you have on Twitter than Periscope?
A lot.
A lot more, huh?
A lot. It's one of those things that I personally just have a lot of conviction around, and I have a lot of belief in the format. And every now and then we don't have instant hits. It just requires a lot of patience, and we need to really learn what it wants to be. And sometimes that takes time. And I think oftentimes I've certainly done this. We shut down things a little bit too early. We did this at Square. Like, we had this amazing technology and app I love called Square Wallet, and it allowed you to you link your credit card, and you have all these merchants around you here in LA, and you could walk up to a coffee merchant, and as you walked up, your name would pop up on the register, so you could say, like, I want a cappuccino, put it on Jack, and it just automatically charged your card. And it would only happen if you were within like 2 feet. We're using Bluetooth and geolocation and whatnot. But we had it for about 3 years, and it just didn't take off, and we shut it down. And I kind of regret doing that, but it also paved the way for another thing that I didn't want to give up on, and that was the Cash App. Like, for 4 years, it was just a slog. Like, a lot of people in the company wanted to shut down the thing. They saw it as something that wasn't successful. And recently the team reached #1 in the App Store in the United States. And like, we were against all these incumbents like Venmo and PayPal, and it finally clicked. And it's just because we had the patience and the conviction around our belief.
Yeah, it's a great app too, and the ethics behind it are really fantastic too. We're really thankful for the Cash App, especially my friend Justin Wren and his Fight for the Forgotten charity, that every time you use the code word Joe Rogan, all one word, it all goes, $5 goes to that. And they've built 2 wells for the pygmies in the Congo, and they've raised thousands of dollars and building more wells right now. It's really, really cool.
Yeah.
We're really, really happy about that.
Yeah. I love it. I think it's
a great way to save money too. I mean, when you can save 10% at Whole Foods, I mean, that's real.
Well, the other thing is, like, the population that we serve typically are underserved by banks or unbanked entirely.
Yes.
Like, we are their bank account.
Right.
But more importantly, they don't have access to things like rewards. You don't get rewards on a typical debit card or a credit card. So, like, just going to your favorite place and getting an instant 10% off or whatever it is out of reach for most people, because the financial institutions don't enable that, and they won't even enable them to get in the door in the first place.
Well, if people are listening to this on YouTube, you don't know what the fuck we're talking about. The Cash App has a thing called a Cash Card, which is a debit card that you get with it, and there's a thing called Boosts. And with Boosts, all you do is pick a boost in the app and then use your Cash Card as a debit card, and you get these automatic discounts, and they're real discounts.
Yep.
And
instant.
And for folks with bad credit, there's no credit check.
Yep.
You can direct deposit your paycheck right into the app.
Yep.
And the fact that you guys do things like support Fight for the Forgotten, and you're supporting UFC fighter Ray Borg's son, who's got some serious medical bills.
Yeah.
It's really, really cool.
Yeah. I'm really proud of it. I'm really proud of the team. It's a very small team, but they're doing some big things.
Well, I hear a lot of good things about it too. I've run into people on the street that tell me they use it and they're very happy about it. So it's nice to see, again, an emerging technology that's profitable, but yet also has a really good set of ethics.
Yeah.
Do you have "Don't Be Evil" in the Cash App's code of
No.
Maybe we should take it. It's open. It's free now.
One of our like equivalent operating principles within Cash and Square is like how do we understand someone's struggle? Like, how do we understand? Like, how do we have the empathy for like what they're struggling with? And like, when it comes to finance, they're struggling with a lot.
Yeah.
Typically, they're struggling with a ton.
What was the thought process with? I mean, one of the things that's kind of cool about the Cash App is that you can buy and sell Bitcoin with it.
Yeah.
Are you guys going to consider other forms of cryptocurrency as well?
Not right now. So back to the internet. I believe the internet will have a native currency.
Really?
It'll have a native currency, and I don't know if it's Bitcoin. I think it will, because just given all the tests it's been through and the principles behind it, how it was created, and you know, it was something that was born on the internet, that was developed on the internet, that was tested on the internet. It is of the internet, and the reason we you know, we enabled the purchasing of Bitcoin within the Cash App is, one, we want to learn about the technology and we want to put ourselves out there and take some risk. We're the first publicly traded company to actually offer it as a service. We're the first publicly traded company to talk to the SEC about Bitcoin and what that means. And it made us uncomfortable. We had to you know, like, really understand what was going on, and that was critical and important. And then the second thing is that we would love to see something become a global currency. It enables more access. It allows us to serve more people. It allows us to move much faster around the world. And we thought we were going to start with how you can use it transactionally, but we noticed that people were treating it more like an asset, like a virtual gold, and we wanted just to make that easy, like just the simplest way to buy and sell Bitcoin. But we also knew that it had to come with a lot of education. It had to come with constraint, because, you know, 2 years ago, people did some really unhealthy things about, you know, purchasing Bitcoin. They maxed out their credit cards and put all their life savings into Bitcoin. So we developed some very simple restrictions and constraints, like you can't buy Bitcoin on the Cash App with a credit card. It has to be the money you actually have in it. And we look for day trading, which we discourage and shut down. Like that's not what we were trying to build. That's not what we were trying to optimize for. We made a children's book explaining what Bitcoin is and where it came from and how people use it and where it might be going. So we really tried to take on the role of education and to have some, like, very simple, healthy constraints that allowed people to consider what their actions are in the space.
Now, when you have something like the Cash App, which is it's very much a disruptive technology in terms of, like, decentralization of banks and currency, and you know, to have it where everything is going right at, you're direct depositing a paycheck right in the app if you so choose, and then you could also buy Bitcoin, which is another disruptive technology. I mean, this is another step towards this sort of new way of doing things.
Yeah.
And is there pushback from any companies, or is there?
Oh yeah. I mean, like, you just look at, like, some of the major banks and their consideration around Bitcoin. They all love blockchain because of the efficiencies it can create for their business and potentially new business lines. But you know, I think there is a...
Explain blockchain to people, for people who don't know what we're talking about.
Blockchain is a distributed ledger, and what that means is that it's basically a distributed database where, you know, the source of truth can be verified at any point around the network. And you can see, you know, this annotation around how content or how around money, like, traveled.
So you don't have to go to an institution to get the records.
There's no centralized check. There's no centralized control over it. And I think that is threatening. It's certainly threatening to certain services behind banks and financial institutions. It's threatening to some governments as well. So I just look at this and, like, how do we embrace this technology, not react to it in you know, more from a threat standpoint, but, like, what does it enable us to do, and where does our value shift? And that's what we should be talking about right now, is, like, how our value shifts. And there's always really strong answers to that question, but if you're not willing to ask the question in the first place, you will become irrelevant, because technology will just continue to march on and make you irrelevant. And it's the people that, like, are you know, growing up with this technology, or born with the technology, only knowing that technology, or are asking the tough questions of themselves that they're going to be super disruptive to their business, and they're thinking about it right now, and they're taking actions. And, you know, we're doing that at Square, and we're doing that at Twitter, and, like, that to me represents longevity. That represents our ability to thrive, and we got to push ourselves. We got to make ourselves uncomfortable, and we got to disrupt what we held sacred and what, you know, we think is accessible. Because otherwise it's not going to be bigger than what we have today.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think that cryptocurrency, to me, represents one of the more interesting discussions on the internet. Like,
Totally.
what is money?
Yeah.
And why are we agreeing that it's these pieces of paper that the Federal Reserve prints out?
Totally. It's a fascinating time in technology because like that to me was one of the last big centralized nationalized instruments is currency, is money. And when you think about the internet as a country, as a market, as a nation, it's going to have its own currency. But what's interesting about the internet as a nation, it's the whole world. It is the whole world. So the world gets one currency. It gets one thing to communicate in. And that to me is just so freeing and so exciting.
Yeah, I'm very excited by it, and I'm also very excited at the fact that it's only been around for such a short period of time. But yet
10 years.
And it's become a part of the global conversation.
Yeah, it's got a good brand.
I also think that it's going to open up the door to potential universal languages, and I think this is yeah.
Yeah, that excites me a lot about Twitter. Is like, how do we if we want to get the world into a conversation, not a single conversation, but at least being able to see that global conversation, like we got to work on technologies that like instantly translate.
Yes.
We got to work on technologies that I can speak as I'm speaking right now, and in real time people are hearing it in their context, in their language, in their dialect. That is amazing. That is so exciting. And like just how that evolves, and how it impacts not just communication like this, but music, and just like how hip hop and rap and just it's amazing to think about where that can go and where that can take us.
Yeah, and I think you and I are extremely fortunate to be alive right now during this time, because I think it's one of the strangest and most unique times in human history.
Totally.
I don't think there's ever been a time where things have changed so radically, so quickly.
Totally. Yeah, and I feel we're able through technologies like Twitter to at least see and acknowledge some of the issues that we're still facing that were probably in the dark before. And I think that's so critical to making any sort of improvements, for making any sort of evolution, and for making it better for everyone on the planet. And I as uncomfortable as sometimes Twitter makes people feel, I think it is necessary to see those things and have conversations about them so that we can understand how we might move forward and how we might really get at the biggest problems facing us all. And there's some huge ones. There's some huge ones right now that if we don't have, if we don't talk about it, like it will drive us to extinction, and like it will threaten our ability to be a planet, to live on this planet.
I agree. Thank you. Thanks for everything, man. Thanks for being here. Thanks for doing what you're doing. Thanks for having the attitude that you have. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you, Joe.
My pleasure. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. That was awesome.
That was great, man.
Thank you.
Go. 4, 3, 2, 1. And we're live, you fucking handsome bastard. Look at you.
Oh, yeah.
Look at you.
Stunning.
What's going on, man?
What's going on? I've done this once before, and I've watched you throughout the years. And when I come in here, I get a little nervous.
Why?
You're a guy who knows a lot about everything, and I don't know a lot of...
I don't know a lot about everything. I know enough to make it seem like I know a lot about everything.
Whatever you're doing, you know more than I do, right? Mm-hmm. Like we were on your treadmill out there.
Right.
And you go, it's 13%, what did you say?
13% more difficult than regular running.
Okay. Like, I forgot the fact what you just said, from the time we walked in, I lost it. So I don't have the retention that I wish I had.
I gotta get you some Alpha Brain.
I need something.
Do we have any here?
Is that what I'm missing in my diet? Alpha
I don't
Brain?
know. I mean, it's what's interesting though is that people will come up to me with shit that happened just a few years ago, and I'm like, I don't remember that at all. Like, I think you have a certain amount of room in your brain, and my brain is always deleting stuff that it doesn't think it needs anymore, and then shoving in new things. Like sometimes someone will tell me about something, I'm like, what are you talking about? And they're like, you don't remember? There was the guy with no arms who drove us around. I went, what? And then I have to go, oh yeah. It's like I find the folder in my head and like, oh, there it is. Yeah. And then we went to the pool hall and da-da-da-da-da. And then I'll remember.
Gotcha.
But it's just, for whatever reason, this, I only keep things that I'm interested in.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I just wish I could retain a lot of the things I either see or hear to then recall it in a conversation.
You can, but you got to write things down and you got to like want to recall things.
Yeah, that's a problem. I don't do a lot of writing as far as like a notepad or anything to just take notes.
When you write your act, do you write it in your head or do you write it on paper or computer?
It's audio, just audio. I go to the Comedy Store, I record it, and I listen to it on the way home, and then I go, oh, maybe I'll do this next time. Maybe I'll do that. I'll take that out, this out, and then so there's no writing. My act is more recalling stories than sitting in a room going, oh, I think this is funny.
Right.
So that's kind of how I work. But yeah, the reason I say that to start off is just like I see you go down a lot of different paths on the podcast, and I often go, man, if I was sitting in that chair, could I add to the conversation? And a lot of times it's no. I can't, just because for whatever the reason, I just feel like I need to be a little bit more well-read.
How often do you read?
Like I read the Goggins book.
Yeah,
and
great fucking book.
Yeah, and
sad life that dude had, huh?
It's
Was there something you needed?
sad life, but then on the flip side, inspiring to, a guy like
Ava.
myself, where I'm running, say I'm working out, and I thought of this guy. I go, you know what? Let's put another mile into this.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm just now starting to get into a little bit more books than I have in the past. Because in the past, to be honest with you, I haven't really read much.
I try to read one new thing a week, and the way I try to do it is I use a lot of audiobooks, but I also read books. So I go back and forth in between them, between reading and audiobooks. But I find for whatever reason I retain more with audiobooks than I do with reading. Maybe it's my ADD
Ava.
or something like that. Because when I'm reading, I kind of have to back up sometimes. Like I'll go through a whole paragraph where I'm thinking about some other shit while I'm reading.
Yeah.
And then I gotta go, okay, asshole, back up, reread that, go over it again,
That's what I find. My mind wanders, like you're saying. The audiobook
Safe
definitely is a
travels.
better option.
Yeah, I think all stand-up comedians have scatterbrains, at least in some way.
Yeah.
Like all of us are a little fucked up.
I think we have to be. I think the mind works in a weird way in a comedian's head. I think it has to be a little bit fragmented and thinking a lot of different things at once in order to operate. I mean, you're doing it on stage. I think you're doing your comedy, and I'm self-evaluating, going, is this working right now? Should I go off into another bit? Should I talk about my family? I see they're liking family stuff, so I think that's what we're doing when we're performing, and then sometimes I think that bleeds to everyday life.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, when you're doing a bit, are you thinking about what do you have a bit on deck? Like while you're in the middle of the bit, do you go from there? I'm gonna talk about the gym or this or that.
It's funny, and I don't know if you go through this. Do you ever go through? Well, first of all, when you're doing comedy, do you have a beginning, middle, and end, and do you know where you're going throughout that whole set, or do you, in the moment, go, you know what, I'm going to do the bit about that, or is it set?
It's both. It depends when. Like right now, I don't have a lot of material because my Netflix special came out in October, so November, December, January. I've basically 3 months worth of new shit, which is about 40 minutes of all told material. And then I have 20 other minutes that are they're in like the baking stage. Like I'm not ready to take them out of the oven. I fuck around with them. I'll shove them in the middle a bit sometimes, but they're not 100% legit. They need to be fleshed out. But one of those became like one of my best bits now. It's weird how that works. Like sometimes you'll just find this one part of it that makes it work, and boom, all of a sudden the bit's turbocharged. So because of that, I decide that day usually what I'm going to open with, and then I leave the middle part up to my imagination, and then I'll decide what I'm going to close with. But when I'm ready to do a Netflix special, I basically have it all mapped out. I basically have a starting point and I have an end point.
Yeah.
But even like when I'm filming, I still fuck around and ad lib because I don't think, because every show I do, I don't have like I'm gonna say it verbatim this way every time. I always fuck around because I always feel like I could find a new way that's better if I just stay loose. And so even when I'm filming, I do it that way because I figure I want this to be like a real show.
Yeah.
If it's a real show, and I always film 4 shows, so I'm like, if it's a real show, I'll fuck around and so I've been filming before. I fuck around. I go down a dark road and there's no one there. I'm like, all right, turn around. like, thank God for editing.
Yeah, I think that's the way to do it, though, to be kind of in the moment and go